Hey, you can look it up on YouTube and search PA. My wife says hello.
Hello to her.
And YouTube is going to be.
Okay.
No, go back to your Zoom. Okay, camera.
Okay.
See up there next to YouTube, that little.
Right.
Uh-huh.
That's what we'll turn it off.
Say stop streaming, and then you can end.
Okay, but I hear the YouTube channel too, so I'm gonna because that'll drive me crazy.
Yeah, delete that.
Okay.
Hey, Vanessa.
Hi,
How you doing?
hanging in there. How are you doing?
Hey,
Same.
Thomas. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you.
Okay. Since yours isn't coming up for quite a while, if you could just,
Or you can put it back in the waiting room.
yeah, if you want me to put you, but then he can't hear us, right?
No, you can actually mute me.
Mute your
and then
microphone.
call me.
And they
Yeah.
can mute it by hitting the space bar, I think.
I'm gonna, okay, yeah, he got it. And I don't think this is-
Where'd Robert go?
Robert's still. Hey, so I just added somebody with a phone number only. 361-442-3005. Who is that?
That's me, Devin Bokta. I'm here with Alex Harris.
Okay. I have you listed. Are you logged in twice?
We
Are
we were having.
to hear us.
Yeah.
Okay, Devin, I'm gonna go ahead and mute your microphone just until we get to your agenda item 2, because it's gonna be just a little while.
Sounds good.
Okay. I see my, can they see all the waiting room and
No.
everything? Only I can.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so the only person that we're having trouble with is Stephen Grunwald. He doesn't seem to have a microphone on his computer, so he's having trouble getting audio. He can hear us and see us, but he cannot talk to us. Stephen, I don't know if you've got a smartphone, if you want to try to download the app and log in just through your phone. I know that's pretty easy. I've done that before. But then I guess if we have any issues, if you just want to call my cell, I'll send you that number right now and you can just give me a call. I only have like 5% battery.
Jared has a baby.
Oh, he's doing good, thanks.
How old is he now? 3 months?
Close to 4.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Goes fast.
Yep.
Okay, I think that we're probably okay to get started.
Okay.
Good by me.
We just text me.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the City of Port Aransas Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, Tuesday, April 28, 2020. It's our call to order. Citizens' comments and reports in accordance with the Open Meeting Act, the Planning and Zoning Commission is prohibited from acting or discussing other than factual responses to specific questions. Any items brought before them at this time. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes or less. Nicole?
Okay, so we had on the agenda that people could call in for comments. it looks like right now nobody's called in for any comments, but I did receive 3 via email that I said that I would read out loud at the meeting. So the first is from Joellen Kruger, and it says, "Hope all is good in these crazy times. I'm writing you to ask you to postpone the April 28th P&Z meeting. All of the items on the agenda are large projects or major amendments. I know they say these meetings can be held via video or phone, but the governor's executive order does not require the city to conduct its public hearing while the disaster declaration is in effect. It simply allows the governmental body to proceed if strict compliance with the provisions would anyway prevent, hinder, or delay necessary action in coping with the disaster. The public hearing for P&Z is not necessary to cope with COVID pandemic. Postponement is appropriate under these circumstances. It seems that everyone's life is on hold and these things shouldn't be pushed through until we can all get back to normal. These projects are mostly for short-term rentals and not essential. These projects should not be getting any special treatment when so many people are suffering. People are so in the dark right now and should have the right to know what is going on, and these meetings are hard to view and hard to hear. I hope you will consider canceling this hearing. Our community needs a little break. As always, thanks for listening to me. I will always fight for this community. It is worth it to me. I am a loyal Port Aransas citizen, and Port Aransas and its people will always come first in my book." We have another one from Will Daly, and he says, "I did not see in the requests for the dune permits the GLO comments, which are supposed to be part of the record, according to section 16-61A4. Are they available and will they be presented at the meeting? I was also wondering who oversees mitigation of the dune permits. Does the city engineer check, or does the applicant have their engineer certify that, or is that even done? If you could put those questions in front of the board today, I would appreciate it." I did respond to Mr. Daly to let him know that the proper protocol for dune permits is you get P&Z recommendation first, then it's sent to GLO for their approval, and then their comments and approval are sent to City Council as part of their application and packet. And I also indicated to him that the applicants for the dune permits let us know when mitigation is complete. City staff is responsible for ensuring that it is. And the third comment is from Mallory Kalaya, who lives on 12th Street. And she said, "Since this meeting is unable to be open to the public for comment today, I believe these items should all be tabled until next week when we can once again have an open meeting. If that cannot happen, my comments are below for today's meeting." She said her biggest concern is the number of dune walkovers for Newport Beach Village. 4 seems to be more than what is necessary, given the fact that the permit and certificate application states that the approximate percentage of existing finished open space within the dune protected area is currently 100%. The resulting open space after the proposed construction of all improvements will be approximately 60%. She said, "Are we really going to let this developer use 40% of the open space for walkovers? This is too much in my opinion, especially when they can reduce that number of walkovers to 2 and leave 80% open space with only having 2. 2 walkovers give access, but does not nearly have the impact that 4 does. Mitigation is also a problem for all of us as a city. Do we really check on mitigation at all? I believe we do not, given our resources. We simply leave it up to each developer to do, and it's not a priority for them. Would you, as P&Z members, be willing to go check on the mitigation? How will we ascertain this requirement? The dune system is critical habitat for city protection, as well as animal and plant habitat, vital to the entire dune line. Please reduce the number from 4 to 2 walkovers. Thank you for your time and your willingness to serve on P&Z." And that's all I got.
Okay, we'll close the citizens' comments and reports. And item 3, public hearing. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, Planning and Zoning Commission is prohibited from acting or discussing, other than factual responses to specific questions, any items brought before them at this time. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes or less.
And we do have one person in our waiting room that might want to be heard. So I'm going to let him in. Typically it's done via phone, but he has I guess somebody gave him the link to log in on video. So this is going to be Mr. Daly, whose email I just read. So we're going to let him in.
So Nicole, is it
sir.
possible for someone to call in if they wanted to?
Yes, sir. So I gave all of you guys the login information to see on video. I gave everybody else just the call-in number, but my guess is somebody forwarded the other information. And so we've got Luke right now. So Luke,
Where's all?
can you hear us okay? Okay.
Mr. Daly or Mrs. Daly going to speak?
No, it's Mrs. Daly this time. Can you unmute your microphone, Luke? Okay. Hey, Luke? Can you hear me? Luke?
Hey.
Hey, Luke. So we're at the we're at the public hearing portion of the meeting. If you wanted to make any comments, I did just read the email that Will sent.
Right, I'm here because I wanted to come. Yep. Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you.
Okay, so if you have comments that you want to make right now would be the appropriate time.
I wanted to read my comments on the Rock Cottages townhome.
Okay.
That's great.
Yes, okay.
You're up.
My first concern, as I have already expressed, is that many of these applications, plats, and reviews and revisions were not available to the public. Okay, I got feedback. This is due. They were not available.
Luke, do you have your phone? Are you using audio from both your phone and your computer?
Willie set up our computer with our television and we're using the computer.
Do you have the YouTube channel on also?
What, Willie, do you know? We got Zoom on. Yeah, we could just go to.
How about using
No.
the phone number, Nicole?
Hey, we're just on the computer now.
Yeah, if they mute one, it'll fix it.
And we're using. Okay.
Okay. So it sounds like you're still on the YouTube channel also. If you could pull up YouTube and hit mute on that, it'll take care of your feedback problem.
Okay,
Move
folks.
over, please.
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, my first concern, this can be part of the regular meeting. Item 4.7 Rock Cottages or 3.1 public comment. My first concern, as I've already expressed, is that many of these applications, plats, and reviews and revisions were not available to the public due to the March 25th stay-at-home orders and closure of City Hall. Oh my God. Rock Cottages, or 3.1 public comment. My first concern is I've already expressed that many of these applications, reviews, and revisions were not available to the public due to the March 25th stay-at-home order.
Nicole, would it be appropriate to call?
This includes every item on this agenda except item 4.3, Beach Gate no dune permit. Some parts of these were submitted as late as Friday, April 24th. These include items 4.7, Rock Cottages Townhomes, 4.8, Mahi Bay Cottage Unit Development, and 4.9, The Landing. Without access to these, the public is at a disadvantage to comment. My first note for Rock Cottages. Oh my God. Read that. Okay. No drainage plan is included for Rock Cottages, but 30 of the 34 lots lie within Area X of the 500-year flood zone. The plats seem to show only a small common area with buildings, streets, and parking covering the majority of the development. Does the 32 feet wide access and utility easement shown on the plats include the entire 20-foot setback required for front yards? All 34 units enter and exit onto Avenue G across from the end of 11th Street. Might this be a problem? Is a 32 feet street adequate for emergency vehicle access, especially if it is technically part of someone's lot, perhaps with parking? With 0 side setbacks and the street extending to the house, it is hard to believe there will be adequate parking. Plats only show one common area and minimal setbacks. All these impervious surfaces will cause flooding. Why are the setbacks from Avenue G only 10 feet? Other properties on this busy street have 20-foot setbacks. This property is located in Old Town and does not meet the intent of that resolution. Landscape ordinance, with almost the entire property covered by streets, buildings, and parking, how does the developer intend to meet this requirement? Especially being on Avenue G, which is one of our, what do they call it? Entrance portals. The Avenue G sidewalk is not shown. Should that be shown on the plat? I'm sorry all this is so confused. This is why we need to have true public hearings instead of virtual public hearings. We are trying to follow the rules, and we wish that the developers would cooperate and just hold off and cooperate and hold off until the public can present these in a logical way. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke. Luke. Yeah. So Kathy, if you could open up her YouTube window and close YouTube.
I think she's got it open. Oh, yes, she does. Hold on.
That's why we're getting the feedback.
All right, there we go. There we
Okay.
go.
Now it's perfect.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right. So, and I'm sorry, I didn't know either that was open. I just want to say real quick that I did send you a comment. It's strictly a public comment. I want to make sure that please read it. I hope you can read it all right.
Did you just send it?
Yes, I did. I sent it in before 5, but I couldn't get it into y'all. And to everybody that's there, of course, I do want to say thank you. And at the same time, I want to say this is why we need these items. I'm sorry, but this is a low down dirty thing that's being done right now to have this stuff come through at this time where we have no right to say anything. And you know where I stand on most of this as far as how it is. It's not that it's bad, but the footprints are all too big. We need to start looking at this in a different way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna read her comment really quickly. Luke, I'm gonna mute your microphone just so that we don't hear anything in the background. If you need to unmute it, if you don't know how to do that, just get my attention and I'll unmute you.
Okay, they said Alt A. So let me just find out how to.
It's okay. I got it. You're muted. Okay, this is from Kathy. I strongly disagree with decisions being made when public participation is severely hampered. In my opinion, all the proposed major permit applications need to be tabled. There has not been near enough time for review and clarification of all of these projects. To be clear, I think Cottages Townhomes, Newport Beach Walkovers, The Landing, and Grand Caribbean applications should all be tabled. It is horrifying to see all the proposed dune destruction applications. It is even more horrifying to see 4 10-foot wide dune walkovers that will have amenities and observation decks. 4 of these is gluttony for what it is, more or less 2,000 feet of beach frontage. The proposed Rock Cottages Townhomes is in Old Town, and clearly no consideration was given for its location. Rock Cottage drainage is going to be a problem for the surrounding neighbors, and naturally there is no green space. Not going to be enough parking either. Rock Cottage Townhomes will look like all of the crap down 11th Street. Needless to say, I, for one, do not support the listed projects as they are proposed. Cut the footprints down on all of these. Stop maxing out every square foot of a property boundary. Unless you're happy with the sea of concrete everything has become. As you know, I would be saying a lot more if I were able to be at the meeting in person. This right should not be denied to me or others because some grasping developers slide these applications in at this critical time. Thanks, Kathy Fulton.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
Anything else to go?
I have nothing else.
I'm going to go ahead and read all of the items in the public hearing completely, and then when we get down to the agenda items, I'm just going to reference them based on their identification number. Item 3.1, PPLT and FPLT 20-0762 preliminary and final plat of Rock Cottages Townhomes, Lot 1, Block 1, Unit 1 through 34, and Lot 1, Block 2. 3.41 acres of land being a portion of Lot 6, Block 32, all of Lot 7, Block 32, and a portion of Lots 4 and 5, Block 37, State Land Survey on Mustang Island, Nueces County, Texas. Said 3.41 acres being comprised of a 0.782 acre tract of land described in a special warranty deed contribution from Williams Airline Partners Limited, 32% interest, and Oceanic DC LLC, 68% interest to Laughing Rock LLC, as recorded in document number 201801390. Official public records of Nueces County, Texas, and tracks 1, 2, and 3 described in a special warranty deed with warranty deed with vendors lien from 503G LP to Laughing Rock LLC, recorded in document number 201801535 of the said official public records. Property location 603 Avenue G, applicant Laughing Rock LLC. Item 3.2, PPLT and FPLT 200683 preliminary and final plat of lots 1A, 2A, 3A, Block 1, The Landing being a replat of Lot 1, Block 1, Landing, Volume 61, page 99, map records, Nueces County, Texas, applicant 347 W. Cotter LLC, property location 347 West Cotter. Item 3.3, PPLT and FPLT 200970 preliminary and final plat of Mahi Bay CUD CUD 10.04 acres being a replat of lots 1, 2, 9, 10, block 98, and lots 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, block 99, state land surveys on Mustang Island, a map of which is recorded in the General Land Office of Texas, Austin, Texas, and being the same property described in a general warranty deed with vendors lien from Deborah Sue Wall, trustee of the Deborah Sue Wall Revocable Trust to Fit Quarter Investments LLC, a Texas limited liability company. Reported in document number 20200100131, official public records of Nueces County, Texas. Property location 220 block of Paradise Point Drive. Applicant Fifth Quarter Investments LLC.
Nick, before you read this last one, this is the item that was pulled. So if you just want to read the part that's in bold, you can skip reading the public hearing portion.
Okay, item 3.4, the developer voluntarily pulled this agenda item. We'll bring it back to planning and zoning in the future due to the ongoing COVID-19 crisis. Therefore, this public hearing will be held at the future date, at that future date. We're going to close the public hearing and move on to items for consideration. Discuss, take action, or pass on any of the following. 4.1, discuss and take appropriate action on January 28, 2020 planning and zoning regular meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Who is Frank?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Robert, second.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I've got Clark Smith,
Yes.
Vanessa Brundrett,
Abstain?
Jay Jones,
Yes.
Garrett Kipke. I don't, go ahead.
Abstain.
Robert Tips,
Yes.
Frank Morgan,
Yes.
Nick Lorette.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item 4.2, discuss and take appropriate action on the February 25th, 2020 planning and zoning regular meeting.
There's a correction on page 2, item B. It says under the motion, Commissioner Clark Smith made the motion to confirm BFDP 20-0357, and then that Clark Smith also second. I don't know who made the second or the motion, but
I've got it marked down. I'll make that correction and change it.
Thank you, Robert.
Any other comments?
no, I move to approve
Second.
with the change.
Right. And that second was Clark.
Yes.
Okay, so Vanessa Brundrett
Abstain?
and Jay Jones,
Yes.
Garrett Kipke,
Abstain.
Frank Morgan,
Abstain, I was at.
Robert Tips,
Yes.
and Nick Lorette.
Yes.
Motion carries. I don't know if I called Clark. Did I call Clark? Okay,
I think you called him first.
Yes, either way.
motion carries.
Item 4.3, discuss and take action to confirm that no dune permit BFDP 200767 is consistent with the city's coastal management plan.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Let me also just give Nicole a big shout out. This will be her last meeting for a while. She will have a baby Thursday, if I'm correct in my calendar, right, Nicole. So like I said, just want to publicly take this opportunity to wish you well. Thank you for getting all of this done, and especially in a pretty crazy time right now. So
Right.
and rest of the staff who's not on the call though in the department has been very very flexible and worked really hard through some pretty crazy times. And so anyway, Nicole, thanks. And like I said, we'll speak again, but just publicly best wishes and
Thanks.
saying a
I
prayer.
think we
for
all
her.
second that.
Yeah, so thanks a lot.
I think the
for,
motion carries.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this as your last official, one of your last official duties. All right,
No problem.
on to business. No, the no dune permit. This is the, Nicole, do you have a way to plug in Google
Yeah.
Earth?
Let
Okay.
me just jump in real quick. So we've got the property owner, or I think that he's the property owner or the manager of the property. Michael Kuhn is on the call. I was expecting David Stevenson to be on, but he does not appear to be on, which
I'm here.
is not a big deal.
I'm
But
here.
oh, are you? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I just don't. Are you?
He's
Can you?
audio only.
Second?
I'm audio only. Yeah,
You're
I
you're
don't have a,
Steve.
yeah, I'm
You're
Steve
listed as
Zero.
Steve on ours. I
Sorry.
apologize. Okay, I just wanted to let you guys know that
Okay.
they both are on the call, and give me just a second and I will pull up.
Okay, so while she's pulling that up, let me just kind of walk you through this. So this actually is a little bit was a little bit of an interesting permit to review because it just they're adding some pretty cool amenities, some hammocks and some game areas, a little putt-putt type area, for lack of a better term, and a swimming pool. So it was kind of a piecemeal approach dune permit that we really hadn't seen in a while. But at the end of the day, I think the exhibits are pretty self-explanatory in that there's really no critical dunes being impacted. So they're working all around critical dunes to kind of create these little amenity areas, which is probably the best way to describe the application and request. So really, with that said, if you had a chance to review the packet, the exhibits, like I said, are very well done, very explanatory. We went back and forth a couple times with some clarifications with the engineer that had provided it. But I think in the end, we found that it was consistent with our coastal management plan. And we had positive comments on the reviews. And so we recommend approval.
Well, I'd just like to say, first off, that I think this is the best engineering plan that we've gotten in a long time. I mean, it's very explanatory. It's very easy to understand. I think they did a great job. Hanson did a great job in putting it together. I wish we got them all that way. But I would also move for approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second Vanessa.
Okay. Okay, let's start with Robert Tipps,
Yes.
Clark Smith,
Yes.
Jay Jones,
Yes.
Garrett Kipke,
Yes.
Vanessa Brundrett,
Yes.
Frank Morgan,
Yes.
and Nick Lorette.
Yes.
Awesome. Motion carries.
Item 4.4, discuss and take action to confirm the dune permit BFDP 200764 is consistent with the city's coastal management plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, this is just a little bit larger scale. Nicole's going to, I assume, move to the Dune Crest area. Probably you're most familiar with the Grand Caribbean and the drive-in. Again, I'll
Rick,
refer you.
I think we're on the
I'm sorry.
drive,
I'm on.
not Grand Caribbean, right?
Yep, I'm on the wrong one. Let me get back to my agenda.
This is Dunes Drive, isn't it?
Correct.
Yes. So this is a rebuild of sorts of a project that had been there again pre-storm. The original project had 4 units, if I remember correctly, Nicole. Isn't that right?
I think they had 6.
Or maybe they did have 6. I think they did have 6. So
And we do for this agenda item, we do have Chad on the phone. We also have Brandy Carl, who's the engineer.
Right. Yeah. Thank you guys for being on the call as well. So if this thing ever renders out, so again, because of the concern that during the rebuild of a slightly smaller project, actually they're scaling down the number of units, but propose a very nice complex. We were just concerned that the proximity to the critical dunes would be impacted with some of the construction. Would really, it was just a really close call with where some of the construction would be taking place. And we just felt after a lot of on-site visits and back and forth that the best approach just going to go ahead and for the property owner and the builder to keep them out of hot waters, to go ahead and get a full dune permit to give them that flexibility to expand some of the amenities, the pool and such. So that's really what you have, kind of a combination rebuild of an existing project, albeit scaled down, but obviously updated to current times, with the possibility of a slight expansion of some of the amenity area. So I don't know if the project engineer there would like to chime in and add anything to that. But in the end, I'll just wrap up. In the end, we did find that, like I said, after a lot of back and forth, this one actually took quite a bit of hammering out, and we appreciate everybody's patience. But at the end of the day, we do find that it now is consistent with the coastal management plan, and it is in conformance, and we recommend approval. That obviously is the pre-storm.
Right.
The pre-storm version.
Right, and they had 6 units then, and I'm familiar with this. I knew someone that stayed there frequently. I think they've done a good job, and I move for approval.
I will second Vanessa.
Okay. Okay. Garrett Kipke,
Yes.
Jay Jones,
Yes.
Clark Smith,
Yes.
Vanessa Brundrett,
Yes.
Robert Tips,
Yes.
Frank Morgan,
Yes.
and Nick Lorette.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wake up, Nick.
Item 4.5, discuss and take action to confirm that dune permit BFDP 200770 is consistent with the city's coastal management plan. Rick?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So obviously there were some comments about this. Let me kind of give you a little bit of history. The project originally, when the PUD was approved by council, I believe it had actually 6 walkovers that was originally approved with the planned unit development that was actually approved initially by P&Z and council. Since then, they at a later date did scale that number down to 4 slightly wider walkovers. But this is what, Nicole, the third time we've seen them renew essentially renew this dune permit for these 4 walkovers. And there was a question about the number, but and again, the engineers are here as well to talk about the number of homes and people that would serve. But when you look at the 4, not inconsistent as far as proximity to each other than what we have right, wrong, or for whatever reason, consistently done up and down the coast. It will propose to serve quite a few people. And like I said, there was a discussion back when it was initially approved.
The last time we approved it was in 2016.
Right. And it was virtually exactly the same as you've got now. Again, with the amenities, with the observation deck, it was discussed. But like I said, originally the project was approved, the planned unit development was approved with 6 walkovers. There was also discussion previously about the width, because these would be some of the widest, some of the wider walkovers that we'd seen. But there was also discussion stemming from the original 2016 permit about growing concern, and I believe it was Councilwoman Bollner at the time, growing concern over the safety of walkovers that allowed for vehicular traffic at all. And so I know part of the discussion back then was, well, the positive side for the wider walkover is that you could actually navigate pedestrians and the golf carts at the same time more safely than just say a 9-foot that actually put them in much closer proximity. Although a foot may not seem like a much when you're engineering something like that, we did kind of find that that 1 foot made a lot of difference. So that's kind of a little bit of the background. Is that I know there's been a question about the number, but you're also talking about a subdivision already approved, already that will have quite a few dwelling units. So with that said, like I said, this again, it's essentially the same permit that we've seen before. It is consistent. They have done a good job, as good a job as we've seen with locating those walkovers in such a way as that it minimizes the impact on critical dunes to the point of some going up and over altogether. So, like I said, that's kind of a little bit of the background and the current status of this. So it is consistent with our coastal management plan, and we recommend approval.
So I have a couple of questions. Is that Pioneer RV Park?
Cinnamon Shores, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yes, this is Cinnamon Shore right here.
North.
Right. These walkovers start immediately south of that Cinnamon Shore boundary.
Okay, I remember this same discussion back in 2016, and it was the same, we basically said the same thing. It's going to accommodate a lot of people, but there has been no development at all in that area. Is that correct?
Correct. I believe that property is up for sale.
Okay.
How do I raise?
Pardon me?
Do I need to raise my hand or do I just talk?
No, just start talking.
Until we start walking over each other, just talk.
Yeah, first come, first serve.
Okay, so my issue is not with the number of walkovers because it is a wide piece of property, but the amenities, decking, that is very concerning to me. It seems pretty vague. We're talking about utilities, plumbing, electric, that they are saying is going to be removable at a moment's notice. What does that mean? How do you construct that, builder, guys?
Yeah, where's our engineer?
What is it?
Steven?
Are we talking about honey pots, like coming up and down the thing to service what are we talking about?
So Will, I think we've got we've got Will on the line, who's the one that sent this in, and Stephen as well. I don't know if Stephen can hear us.
I can, but I'll let Will answer the question.
Okay, awesome, Steve. Thanks.
All right. So the utilities and amenities. Let me pull it up here. Sorry about that. So for the amenities and these observation decks, can y'all hear me okay, by the way?
Yeah.
Yes.
We have these observation decks on the walkovers. Those are for turnaround areas. They're labeled on the topographic survey attachments.
I'm trying to pull that up. Give me just a second.
Well, this is Rick. Like, is it on attachment number 2? Yeah, attachment number.
Yeah, they're labeled
page
on there.
73 of my package.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think you guys can probably see what Will is talking about on the screen here. Okay, go ahead, Will.
So yeah, as you can see near the south, the walkovers, we have it labeled seating in the turnaround area. We also have these observation amenity decks. Oh gosh, and it's
What is that? What's an amenity deck?
My understanding from reading the packet was that it's going to be rentals and bathrooms, which seems to me to be way overstepping the boundaries of a walkover with minimal dune disruption. But it's too vague. I don't really know what it is.
The observation and amenity decks won't have anything like that on them. They'll just be seating areas. I imagine if they had any utilities, it'd be electrical or water. So you can rinse your feet off. But
Okay.
I don't
That's
imagine
not
that
actually what it says.
Where are you reading?
I'm trying to find it. I read this a couple hours ago, so let me see.
I just found it, Vanessa. It's in the introduction page. Second.
Okay.
Give me a page number.
It's page 53 in mine.
Oh, you have the one without the minutes.
Did you say 53?
I think it was the original one you had sent out.
It's okay, no problem. Hang on just a second. It'll just take me a second to get there. All right, it should be right here, Vanessa.
Okay.
Which page?
Yeah, 62 in my package.
Okay, I'm there.
Paragraph.
Observation points, convenience, rental, sale, outpost, and will include bathrooms and shower stations, all of which will be covered by a roof structure. These will also be designated to allow the electrical, plumbing, roof, and the structure itself to be practically relocatable in the event that relocation is necessary. So what I'm trying to figure out is, how do you do that? And you know, a walkover is one thing, but bathrooms and rentals and all this other stuff is a whole nother thing. So if that's not the intention, I feel like it should be the application should be revised to remove that language.
I agree. That is not the intent of the application. I'd like to propose striking through convenience, rental, sale, outposts, and will include bathroom and shower stations, all of which will be covered by roof structure or fabric shade structure.
Yeah, and to be clear, I have a problem with any type of utilities to be out there.
I would like to propose that we.
It's one thing to stick, wood in the ground, but it's another thing to have things that need to be serviced regularly.
I agree with that, and I would like to propose that we pull the whole thing until you can figure out exactly what you're really proposing out there.
The areas are simply seating areas. I would like to continue with this application if
That's not
possible.
what it says. That's not what it says.
I understand. I would like to remove
But
that.
seating areas with what? Lights, electric? What are we? That's what I'm saying.
Bathroom and shower stations?
Yeah, Stephen, I guess to move it forward with what at this point would they be willing to, without having to go back, accept it without utilities and striking that? In other words,
all of this,
the way the exhibit says, which is just a seating area and turnaround.
Yes, remove the highlighted text from the
Yeah, I don't
application.
have anybody I don't hear an objection to that part, but I mean, I obviously understand the concern with any type of utility, electrical. Well, Vanessa, what about lighting?
Exactly. So there's a difference between utilities being serviced with lines versus, say, solar panels or something. That's a big difference. Also, what is the turnaround for?
The turnaround is provided for several reasons. It allows golf carts to turn in general around that corner because it's pretty tight. It also allows a user coming from the subdivision to a less than desirable beach. If the tide's really high or the sand's too soft for their golf cart, they can turn around safely and get back into the neighborhood.
Can I speak, Nick?
Go for it.
Seems a little aggressive. Does anybody, I guess I'm the elder on here, and Frank, you're probably the next, is that correct? Have we ever done anything? I don't recall anything like this in the last 16 years. And the other one that, if someone can refresh my memory, I don't recall any roof structures
Right.
on these walkover drive-overs.
I don't either. And
Not
I don't
describe
know.
a roof over these little sitting areas? I thought it did.
I agree with you, Nick, and I don't understand what convenience rental sale outpost means either. That concerns me since we obviously.
Right. I mean, I could come up with a couple of ideas of what it means, but I mean, Stephen, if that's not the intent, let's not. I mean, I can imagine all sorts of ideas having been battered around, and maybe that was one at one point, but you've indicated that's not the intent, at least at this point, right?
That's correct.
Well, I feel like giving this dune permit or approving this or recommending approval of this dune permit would be setting a precedent. And I don't feel comfortable with that right now.
I agree.
I just don't think it's appropriate at all.
What?
So even if we remove this highlighted area to where it just says gathering areas and look at observation points, the rest of it comes out.
Yes. Also,
Just
but
so they know
also
what-
just the observation deck itself, whether or not it's roofed at all, is unprecedented.
Well, actually, it's
And I
not. This would be the not that you don't have the ability to vote, but this is exactly what was approved 3 years ago. Almost
Right. So, but it hasn't
actually
been
exactly.
built.
I'm sorry?
But it hasn't been built.
Absolutely. But I mean, I just want to be clear that it's not a precedent because it has been approved once before. So now
I personally feel like this
Easy.
is an opportunity to rein this back in.
This is exactly what was approved 3 years ago, John, 4 years ago.
I think it's identical, but Stephen, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
'Cause I don't remember anything about
It
convenience
was
retail
approved
sale.
in 2016 with this exact wording.
I'd like to chime in here. This permit is a little bit different than the old permit. I looked at the old permit and the 4 walkovers going onto the beach, they had a little bit of impact, and I've learned a little bit since I drew those up. And I actually made these walkovers have 0 volumetric impacts. So we're not tearing out dunes to install these walkovers. They're going up and over them as much as possible. And the intent of that little area is exactly what was built on Royal Sands. Walkover that was built, but it finished a month before Harvey hit. This area isn't something new. It's not something different once that text is removed.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 16-1790, the permit, the exact, and the language is identical. So that was in Dune Permit 16-1790. That was the exact language that was approved at that point.
Well, we've learned a lot.
Regardless, like I said.
Yes, we have.
And
Right.
I'd like
So they
I'd
are
like to
willing
push for
take out that whole highlighted area, which I've made note of.
Well, for me to vote for approval, I would need a minute or a little bit of time to go back and review the whole application and make sure that that language is removed from all sections. I mean, I don't know if everybody wants to wait for that, but
Well,
currently,
Vanessa, just you stating it on the record becomes what will happen regardless. I mean, if that's what you say, that is the record.
yeah,
and
I
that is
have
what your
no
intention
problem with the number of walkovers. It's those platforms that they're too, they're extraneous. They're not needed. They're already 10 feet wide.
Typically, that language is not repeated in other places, but if you make that part of your motion, we can definitely make sure that that is amended and sent back to us. we can ensure that that language isn't in there.
Or you can take a minute and read.
Yeah,
Yeah,
whatever
that
you
too.
want.
Yeah, I'd like to see the removal of all the observation decks, just 10-foot wide walkovers.
How about the turning areas? I think that might be a safety feature that I don't.
They're 10 feet wide, Rick, and there's 4 of them. You can have a one-way and you can have 2 one-ways going one way, you can have 2 going the other way,
I'm with
which I
Vanessa.
believe is what other subdivisions have done.
I think there's just the one turning area on each one. No.
Yeah.
Right, but you don't need to necessarily turn around if you've got 4.
Well, what he said was if you can't make it onto the beach and you don't want to back up the whole length of that walkover, it's pretty common in other walkovers.
Cart accessible walkovers. I mean, that's not very big. I mean, it's just enough to
Right.
turn the cart around.
Right. Well, I think that right now talking about golf cart hardships is maybe not where we are.
I'm with Vanessa on this, and Rick, you may remember, you and I talked about this 4 years ago when it came up, and I was opposed to it then, and I guarantee you I'm opposed to it now.
What part, Frank? I mean, just
the whole thing. First of all, the first thing you and I talked about was the number that they're proposing, because they've not done any construction out there at all, and they want 4 of them. They don't really know that they need that many. And then I really don't like the convenience rental. I don't.
Well, I
know
agree.
that-
I think that's out though. I think that, I think for whatever reason that's out.
I understand they just took that out. And then I'm with Vanessa. These are 10 feet wide. That's a big walkover.
Well, remember we've also just approved 14-foot wide walkovers. So relatively speaking, it's one of the smaller walkovers that we do.
That doesn't make me any happier.
I know.
Any other commissioners have some thoughts?
Yeah, and again, I'd be remiss if I didn't, like I said, whatever your pleasure is, we're here to serve. But again, I got to point out that the original planned unit development was approved by council with 6 walkovers, and so they've only come back with. And again, I think Frank, you were part of the discussion back when. I think the concession and agreement was they would never go back with 6 if they got the 4.
I was a part of that, and I remember that very well. But I was opposed to the 6 and I was opposed to the 4.
I got you. Okay.
But, I was told I had to vote for it because they crossed their T's and dotted their I's.
I think just from my point of view, again, we've done much wider. I think it's a reality and not a consideration for the turnarounds. I kind of feel the same way that Vanessa does. I don't so much have an issue with a seating turnaround area. We've already got crossovers out there that have that. And I will say it's kind of nice to be able to pull off sit their long walks. I just want to ensure that there's no building or construction going on the crossover. A cutout that, whether you call it a turnaround or a seating area, what difference does it make? There's 2 on this project. They've reduced the number of overall from the original application. They're not as wide as some of the other projects, like are down the road a little bit. I actually agree with the fact that there should be no utilities on board whatsoever. But I do think that, a seating, or let's call it turnaround area, is not a out of line request.
Hey, Will.
Yes, sir.
Also, so I mean, I want to point out, because I think I'm looking at this correctly, and you referenced it, but I don't want it to be glossed over, because this is kind of a big deal too. I mean, when you look at these walkover profiles, if I heard you correctly, and I'm looking at the profile, none of these require, all of these go up and over the dunes, I guess, in a layman's way of putting it, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's, again, guys, that again, for what it's worth.
You already
is-
said that there's no mitigation required.
Yeah, is also significant. I mean, this has been happening more and more, which I'm glad of. But there was a time where, you know, there was dunes that were impacted and we had to mitigate for them. But like I said, these do go, if you look at the profiles, they've done a good job, as I mentioned earlier, just going up and over. So for what that's worth.
Any other commissioners?
I just did a little playing around on Google Maps, and it looks like there are several with the wider walkover, anywhere from 10 to 14. It's kind of hard to measure on Google Maps, but to get a general idea. And then there are a few of them in there that also have a wider area for either a golf cart passing each other or an observation sitting, whatever they use. But at the same time, I do agree with trying to restrict any utilities and covered structures.
Are the, Clark, are any of the observation amenities 25 by 25 on the other one?
I found some, I mean, I'm just cruising on Google Maps and measuring on there. I found some that were definitely 20. Could not find any that were quite, I mean, I think, what are these called out as 25 by 25 and
Yes.
15 by 30. So I didn't see any like exact that size, but I did see some at least 20-foot ones. I didn't feel confident on exact measurements though.
So a 6-seater golf cart is 10 feet long. You know, in my mind, if you're going to allow these, maybe we restrict the size of them to 20 by 20 or no greater than 400 square feet or whatever that is, just to give you the depth and some bench seating or something of that nature. But again, I mean, this is already commonplace. The porch itself may be a little large compared to what's out there today. So I think if they're willing to strike the language about the utilities and the covered buildings and everything else, we can make a recommendation or request that they, you know, size these things a little more appropriate for what it is.
This is Stephen. That should be acceptable. These areas are also used on the other ones I've worked on for people carrying coolers and things from their house to the beach without a golf cart or a wagon or whatever. They'll stop on these midpoint rest areas, I guess, and knock their shoes off if they're on their way back from the beach, or get their shoes back on their kids' feet, that kind of stuff. So that's the ultimate intent.
Whatever the outcome, if it is a motion to approve in some form or fashion, I also want to mention we have most recently, we've asked that the motion includes the staff's ability to determine the final terminus point. In other words, we want to make sure that just because it's drawn in, that we actually see it staked out and reserve the right, or you guys give us the ability to slightly modify that terminus so that if it's not tucked in consistent with the other ones, that we do have that latitude. With all due respect, engineers, sometimes, like I said, it causes a little frustration when we start altering what a drawing is, but the beaches move and migrate, and like I said, I just want to make sure that we have the final say so of at least adjusting a little bit where that thing comes out.
And then I have another question too. And I'm sorry, my iPad's going crazy here, but the attachment number 1 shows 1 walkover on walkover C. And I'm sorry, I lost my place here. I'm trying to get back to it, but the next attachment shows one of those platforms on every single walkover. So which one is it?
The application is for what's shown in the topographic survey exhibit, attachment number 2. So it would.
Okay, so number 1 is not accurate.
Yes, that's correct. I mean,
Okay.
the site map shows the general alignment, and the next exhibit shows the details.
So Vanessa, to make sure I got this correct, you're requesting that we note the exhibit that shows 2 build outs, exclude number 1 and go with the second one that basically only shows 2?
I think the second one shows 4, but I'm still trying to get back to it. Sorry, here we go. I think I'm here now.
Attachment number 2 shows 2 boardwalks
Well,
with observation decks.
Right, and then the next, but it's 2 pages. So the next page shows the other 2 with their decks. The next page
Oh, I
shows
see what you're saying.
C and D. Yeah,
Right,
so it's A and B
right.
and then C and D.
So
But
they
it's
all
the,
4 basically have a bump out.
right.
Right. And Stephen, were you saying that that's the intent, or that only 2 of them are supposed to have the observation or the deck on them?
They're supposed to all have the deck on them.
Okay.
So instead of us just redlining this and saying, we'll take this out, we'll do that, and we're not going to do the decks, I think this ought to be pulled, and we should wait for the engineers to come back with something that's actually what we're proposing and what they're agreeing to. I just don't think it's appropriate to present this to the city council the way we're talking about redlining stuff.
Yeah, well, if it's redlined and before it gets to council, it would be corrected. Is that right, Rick?
Yeah, we'd ask them to.
Those corrections would be made before, before it's presented.
Right. I mean, whatever you guys propose, if it's acceptable, then we would just ask them to just make that modification and send it on.
I think we ought to pull it.
Any other comments from commissioners or questions?
Nope.
So quick comment, what are the other P&Z commissioners' position on minimizing the size of deck to like 20 by 20?
Personally, 5 foot one way or the other, I don't think is a make it or break it for me. The biggest thing for me is the shade structure and the utilities.
Okay. Anybody else?
I agree with that.
I understand the function, I understand the purpose. I guess, what if there would have been 2 more on each one of these? I mean, whatever we're doing, we are establishing something that we then talk about on down the
Right.
road. And so
We're setting a precedent.
precisely. And I've walked these, I've studied the existing ones, and all those improvements were way over the top. That's not the intended purpose of connecting the beach front to development, I believe, and definitely not a roof. So I'm not, just a matter of how big does it need to be, but how'd you come up with 25 by 25? I mean, it's really not a place for, other than turning around, for golf carts to just hang out, I don't think.
And you're sitting, every single one of us is probably sitting in a room that doesn't cover 25 by 25, and that's a large area.
Right. It's the precedent thing that, but y'all are, Clark, you were inferring that you were on Google measure, you were at like 20 by 20 on a couple.
Yes, I did find several that were 20 by 20. It looked like some of them had like bench areas to kind of hang out in.
Or
more-
take a break in a hot day before you make the rest of the lap with your 4-year-old. I understand that.
Right.
Right. But if you're on a golf cart, that's not really a consideration. If you're on foot, then you don't need 25 by 25 square feet to rest.
Very true.
So Nick, is your thought that do not support any of these types of additional build outs on a crossover?
No, I just don't want the boogie board rental. And if it is similar size to this, that's fine. It's just a rhetorical question. Why did we come up with this amount, and what would happen if there was another one halfway towards the development? And that would be excessive. So I guess in just talking out loud, you will have at times people there, kids need to take a break, change a diaper, whatever, elderly people. And there also needs to be a place for a turnaround. And I wouldn't have a problem with the size. I'm just talking rhetorically about, let's don't have a whole series of these. And I think the one down by the beach is very functional.
Well, I'm sitting in a room that's exactly 25 by 25. This happens to be, and it's huge. I mean, and I think it is designed to have facilities included. And I think that once it's built, it's on its way.
I mean, so my kind of comment and going back on this is, as a steward of the coastal management plan and the dune protection, I guess the question we should be asking is it excessive? And I mean, that's a large footprint to cover with deck that is not really serving any purpose outside of, and again, I own golf carts and I've had mine turned around in 2-3 inches of water. It's not preferred, but they're not gonna, I don't know. Those days are few and far between. It seems kind of excessive in my mind. I've been in this business 5 years and I've never had to turn one around on a boardwalk. So, I don't know. I mean, just those are my 2 cents.
Let me ask you though, just so with there being no critical dune impact whatsoever.
Well, is that true, Rick? Because if you cover a planted dune with 400 square feet of shade, what happens to the dune underneath?
Well, because if you look at the profiles and they're up, you don't block the sun out.
They're built in a way that
I'm just saying. I understand when we start talking about footprints, and it's usually in the context of impacts. But here, just hypothetically and philosophically, as Nick likes to say, we don't have any impact to dunes. And yeah, I mean, you could argue that maybe there's some light, but it's high enough that light penetrates. So is that not a better alternative than something that we used to do that was narrower, but actually cut through dunes, where we actually went in there and we chopped them down? I'm just, like I said, there's some houses that are built, there's some large footprint houses that are built in this same area. If you look down, if Clark has Google Earth or something, you look down, we have huge houses that are built in this area. So I'm just trying to kind of I just want to point it out, because sometimes we talk about that, but here we've got areas where there's no impact to the dunes whatsoever. So
hey, Rick.
Go ahead.
Rick, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yep.
How do it looks like my screen took a sleep. Is there somewhere where you hit?
Move your mouse.
I'm moving it. Pause wouldn't be, it says pause. Should I hit paused?
Try it.
We see you.
Yeah, what happened?
I just don't have the privilege of seeing you guys.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but Mr. Chair, I'd like to call the question.
Go ahead, sir.
I said I would like to call the question if it's appropriate.
Sure.
vote on it.
All right.
You don't have a motion yet.
Well, I'll make a motion. My motion is that we disapprove this.
There you go.
I will second. Vanessa.
We have a motion and a second.
Okay, so we have a motion to deny this dune permit. So a vote yes is a vote to deny the dune permit. Robert Tips,
No.
Clark Smith,
No.
Jay Jones,
No.
Oh, well. So we're gonna allow even the language isn't even stricken.
No.
Nobody's made a motion to approve it. This is just.
Nobody's made a motion to
deny it.
approve. This is to deny it.
So if we, hang on, let me finish this. Garrett Kipke,
So this is
a vote no is a vote not to deny it and to continue on for possibly more discussion or another motion. So if you want to deny it, you vote yes. If you don't want to deny it at this point, you vote no.
I guess I would just question why it's so necessary to be so large.
It's just a vote.
Okay. A vote no. I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's okay. Do you want to deny the dune permit at this stage, or do you want to not deny it?
Oh.
If you choose not to deny it, we have further a discussion and potentially another motion.
Right. It's not an approval. It's just you're not denying it.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't deny it then.
Okay. Frank Morgan,
Yes.
Vanessa Brundrett,
Yes.
Nick Lorette.
No.
Okay, so motion to deny fails.
That tells me that there's some consensus of there's got to be some common ground we can get to as to what you will approve.
Well, there is, Rick. And so here's the thing. Denying this is only going to bring it back next month. And we didn't solve anything that we couldn't solve right now and move it forward.
Well, hold on just a minute, Robert. What I said earlier was, I think we should deny this right now and let the engineers come back with a new plan, as opposed to us just redlining and saying, okay, we'll go along with this, and you can take away your 25-foot covered area and your convenience store and whatever the hell else. I'm just saying we need to let them come back next month with a revised plan. And yes, it was six walkovers 4 years ago, or 5 years, whatever year it was, and it's 4 now. But my point is that we just need to let them come back, as opposed to us approving something, sending it to the council that we really don't know what we're sending to the council.
We know exactly what we're sending.
No, I don't.
If we are to strike all of the language related to any type of amenities, services, and overhead build utilities on those decks, that is what City Council is going to get.
I haven't seen that. I have not.
Frank,
seen
what
that.
would you like to see? And I think Robert's
I would like
point
to
is
see the engineers send us a proposal, just like they did this month, but with the changes that are made. Because I mean, I don't understand what it means, convenience and retail sales.
We're going to strike that.
We're going to strike
There
it.
is none. It means nothing, Frank. It's gone. It will no longer be part of the application.
I would like to see a revised application with that information deleted. That's what I'm asking for.
Okay, well, you made a motion to deny, and we already did not do that. So
I guess for me, I'd like to see a proposal from the end user. this property's for sale. This is to sell to somebody, these dune permits. They may have a totally different conceptualization of what they actually want to do. I don't know. It just seems.
I'm afraid that's not the,
I know.
I mean, that's not, the applicant has the right to apply.
I know.
For the owners. And I mean, we all know, we've seen this a zillion times, that this property might not sell for 10 years and there might be a whole new plan. So my thought is, Frank, I hear you on what you want, but staff is very capable of having that rewritten, and I at least put faith in them to rewrite it based on what we're striking. And the size of the pullout, somebody sent me a few pictures. I'm not smart enough to be able to send them to y'all, but it's the same thing you were looking at, Clark, up and down the beach. And I saw 3 or 4 that were very similar in size. And,
I mean, Frank, I hear you, but if we've spent all this time on it, if we can hammer out what you want, I mean, what you do want, granted, it may be right now, it would be a red line, but it won't be by the time it gets to council. So your will be presented. I hate to just come back with something that it sounds like we're pretty close to a majority approving.
Well, I want to make sure you understand. It doesn't sound like it's just my will. It sounds like there's a majority of us that feel like we need to modify what was presented.
I agree. So if we can make the modifications, then we're done with it.
So I'll go back to my question that I
care.
posed to the other commissioners earlier is, my kind of feeling is that 25 by 25 is a little large. I think Stephen already said that if it was shrunk down to 20 by 20, and I know Clark, you said 5 feet either way doesn't make or break anything, but it's kind of a compromise. And one thing it does do is the intended use of it becomes less, let's call it attractable for rentals and services and whatnot. So,
and I agree, if we allow them a larger size now, then it opens up more opportunity down the road for what could be done with it. So I am in agreement with that.
So I'm going to make a motion just, because I think we have a majority that agrees on a change, but it needs to be out there on the table. So I'm going to make a motion, and I don't see the number here. Hold on. Dune permit, DFDP 20-0770 is approved under the stipulation that the verbiage related to utilities, overhead building, rentals, any kind of activity on those decks is stricken. And that my recommendation, or I think the better way to go about this, is to minimize or maximize the size of those 4 crossover build outs to no more than 400 square feet or 20 by 20, however you want to do it.
And staff has final say so to work with the engineers for the terminus.
Yes.
I second. Clark Smith.
Okay. Vanessa Brundrett.
No.
Jay Jones.
Yes.
Garrett Kipke.
Yes.
Clark Smith.
Yes.
Frank Morgan.
No.
Robert Tips.
Yes.
And Nick Lorette.
Yes.
Motion carries.
I know we've completed this, but I just really don't quite understand. Why could we not let it come back next month with them making all the changes that we've talked about and letting us then look at it and then present it to the council? I don't understand that. And I don't know
Unnecessary work.
I don't know that I need a response. I'm just venting, I guess.
It's a procrastination technique that is not necessary. I mean, it can be handled right now and staff can make the correction. And I mean, it's
This is unacceptable. I'm sorry, this is unacceptable. We are all listening in to you guys and we're paying attention to everything going on. And I know you are voting, but I'm going to tell you right now, no, this should be something that is allowed to come back with a revision that everybody gets to approve, not these modifications that may slide through. Sorry.
When the public can be there.
We are in a vote, guys.
Okay,
If we
guys,
wanted to
it's-
talk, this is not appropriate time to talk. If you wanted to, it should have been in discussion.
I tried.
Apologize, but there is a vote. We can't even talk about it right now. So,
Okay, they're muted.
we're
Hey,
done.
I want to say something so everybody knows. I may have been the person that accidentally sent that to Willie and them. I didn't intend to, so that they could access it. They asked me, they didn't get, Nicole, they did not get the agenda. And I thought I sent them the agenda. I didn't know that I sent the information or the contact so that they could get into the meeting. And I apologize for that. And
That's okay.
and Luke and Willie and Kathy, if y'all are listening,
They could still hear.
if you're listening, I did not, this was not appropriate for you guys to join in this. This is our meeting. But I did want you to see the agenda since you told me you did not have it. But so if I screwed up, I'm sorry.
We're all learning. It's okay. They
Well said.
are welcome to stay at the meeting. They just can't interrupt. It's got to be appropriate.
Please stay.
Frank,
Yes.
I have a conflict on item 4.6 and you are co-chair. Could I invite you to take over? And technically, if you want me to walk out where you can't see me, that'll be fine. Or I'll comment as an
So
agent.
that's Grand Caribbean?
Pardon me?
That's Grand Caribbean?
Yes.
Okay. This is. Well, let me get back up here and read it. Just give me a second.
Do you have another room to go to, Nick?
Do you want me to go to another room?
No, you're.
No, we're just
I do. I need to go somewhere right now. I'll be right
I
back.
see a closet.
I did that a while ago, so go ahead.
Be sure to close the bathroom door or mute him. We don't want to hear that.
Okay, that's 4.6, is that right?
It should be the Grand Caribbean.
Okay.
4.6.
All right, here we go. Discuss and take action to confirm the Dune permit BFDP 20-0976 is consistent with the city's coastal management plan. The proposed permit will allow the construction of multiple single-family residences with typical residential amenities, i.e. decks, driveways, excuse me, utilities, irrigation lines, associated landscaping, etc. In a dune walkover, applicant Bill Ott, BBD, property location 5495 Highway 361, Grand Caribbean dune permit application. All right, Ricardo.
Thank you, sir. Will, is this your submittal?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, so this is the one, hang tight. So this is the one that I referenced earlier. Again, for those that are familiar with the dune, with the Grand Caribbean, this project, again, kind of picks up essentially at the end of that driveway. It is the application explains multiple multifamily buildings. Like I said, the documents, as is typical, does show the area of impact, the mitigation, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I'll let Will, since he's here, kind of talk a little bit more about the project and a little bit about what's proposed and what's going on.
All right, so part of the package, I don't know what sheet it is. I have my own personal one pulled up. Someone can find it.
Reference where you are in the packet.
Let me pull it up here. Oh gosh. Okay. We're going to be going to the topographic survey attachment.
Attachment 1 is on page 95 of mine.
So it'd be 96.
Is that the one you're looking at, Will? Attachment 1 kind of shows the...
Attachment 2, it's a little more in depth, a more in depth look of attachment number 1. Gosh.
Sorry, you're a little slow.
Okay.
We said attachment. I apologize. Attachment number 1 or number 2?
2. So we have our subdivision layout there, our footprints. And it's in a relatively flat area. It goes up maybe 1 foot over a couple 100 feet in some areas. What this dune permit is really for is for the walkover, since it does go through the erosion into the vegetation line onto the beach. Same as last proposal or last item. It's a walkover that goes up and over the dunes high enough so it's not impacting the dunes except where temporary impacts will be made, which will be mitigated for, obviously. And so there's no impacts or mitigation for this. Permanent impacts or mitigation.
Wait, you said there's no mitigation?
Well, there's no permanent.
I'm sorry, say again?
There's no permanent impacts that will need to be mitigated for.
So who's going to oversee the mitigation that you do?
That would be for the city and the GLO.
Which means we don't
In other words, the construction of the multifamily buildings is in an area that's already flattened.
Yes, it just happens to be behind that 1,000 foot dune protection line.
But because the walkover obviously has to cross through that dune protection area, and there is construction, then it does require that triggered them having to get the full dune permit. But by using the term no permanent impact, in other words, the construction of the walkover obviously will impact some vegetation, and so they'll get in and prepare that to revegetate and take those measures. We'll just follow up that was done. But in this case, it's going up and over, so it will be very, very minimal. It'll be the insertion of the pilings, and the necessary construction work on the periphery of the walkover. But then that will revegetate. They'll prepare that to revegetate, and it'll be done. So there's no permanent impacts other than the holes, which really we don't really consider the holes for the. Well, I guess it is an impact technically, but so you understand the point there. So that's the nature of the permit.
Well, and I guess I understand that, and I mean I went out there Sunday and looked at it, and I see what they're wanting to do, basically, and it is not as drastic as the ones that we had just a while ago. But my concern about all of these is, do we really have anybody overseeing the mitigation on these projects? And
There's no mitigation on this project, Frank.
There's no mitigation.
Well, there is. I mean, they got it back.
They did what? There's no.
They got to
impact
put
to
it
critical-
back. Whatever they move, they got to put it back.
They're not moving anything, Vanessa. It's all on flattened land already.
Well, she's talking about
the walkover.
Walkover.
Oh, well, yeah, but they're not moving. It's only pole holes.
Yeah, well, for the construction, they're going to disrupt. What he's saying, they've even said in the application, they're going to disrupt it but
They
they're gonna
do.
put it right back where it was.
Right.
Correct. So
And
just so we
Frank,
all
your
agree
question-
that the triggering event for this dune permit was the walkover. Correct, Rick?
Correct.
Yes.
So the triggering event is that it's in the 1,000-foot dune protection.
Correct.
It would have been a no dune permit had it not been for the walkover.
Correct.
But to answer your
And
question.
is the walkover
right now,
tying back,
staff is
tying
still-
into an existing one?
No, the walkover was originally directly behind that condominium.
Mhm.
The new owners wanted to move it in between the condominium and the proposed subdivision.
I'd like to speak as the agent to the developer.
Sure.
Go ahead.
In the closet.
The Grand Caribbean has its own walkover. This is an independent piece of property. It's not,
Okay.
it's a part of the original Grand Caribbean development, but it was all the land that was not a part of the Grand Caribbean condominium. And this is a
Right.
different walkover than the walkover they rebuilt after the hurricane, I believe. And you could correct me if I'm wrong, Urban.
Well, just to be clear, the attachment number 1 to the application shows it tying into the existing and going over onto the condominium co-owner's property.
I'll yield to the engineer. I apologize. I'll be quiet.
Again, I'm just trying to be clear about
That-
what are we talking about?
But the one that's, I'll be quiet.
That's just a proposed picture of it. That walkover in that photo is actually destroyed.
Yeah, it's not there
It's
anymore.
not there anymore.
Okay.
That one right there that we're looking at,
Yeah, the photographed
let me-
one is destroyed. It's
destroyed. Okay.
broken apart.
Okay.
Right. But the actual trajectory of the new walkover is nothing to do with this photo, right? Because it's
Yeah,
showing
it's
it going
it's
back
just a
over onto
spot
the
that has already
co-owner's
been
property.
flattened and that's already been used. It was just to help find a trajectory with a place with low points that we could get up and over those dunes, so we didn't have to cut through any or do any of that stuff.
Well, sure, but is it what's being proposed? Is the
Yes.
question.
Yeah,
So
there's.
we are proposing to go back over and into the other property to try to go where it was before. I'm a
It's-
little confused because what Nick was saying is that the new walkover that they want to build for their subdivision is not going to be on the condominium property, but this
Yeah.
clearly shows it on there.
And Rick, this is a Google Earth is indicating that this is a 2020 picture.
This is right here.
I'm just
That's-
confused about what we're looking at.
So this is Google Earth and it's saying that this is a 2020 current photo.
I don't think that's right. I was just out there Sunday.
It doesn't feel, I don't remember
Yeah.
that, but
Well,
out there as
I
well.
will
No,
say,
I believe that is correct. I believe they did rebuild that walk.
yeah, we had some friends that stayed there over the winter.
Yes, I think they did rebuild theirs.
In that same location?
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they would have
This
had
is
to.
the right
If they
picture.
rebuilt it, they would have had to build it in the same location or else we would have required a full dune permit.
Right,
Stephen
So I
Grunwald.
guess-
can you-
yeah.
Go
Chime
ahead,
in here.
Stephen.
I'm here. But to be honest, I don't know much about the dune permit application. Stephen and Will were working on it and I kind of left it in their hands. So I can't provide much input on this. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's
I
it.
do think that's an accurate picture though, currently.
Okay, can I pose my question real quick?
Yes.
So regardless of what's there or what's not there, the proposal shows that the new walkover being proposed today crosses back over onto the condominium property and ties into that either existing or previously existing walkover. That's what it shows. And they're saying, no, that's not what they want to do. So I'm trying to figure out, are we looking at the right proposal?
Yes, the dune walkover, the intent was to build a whole new walkover. And not tie into the existing one, but I'm going to request that we table this item so that I can go back and double check and make sure that that existing walkover is or isn't reconstructed, because I wasn't aware that it was being reconstructed while I was working on the dune permit. And I
Right. Well,
unless,
for me,
unless you can tell me that you were out there when you took the pictures and that walkover was or was not there.
I don't think it matters whether or not it's there. What I'm asking is, where is this thing supposed to go?
Well, I think it's both things, Vanessa. Because I was out there Sunday and I didn't see that tied in like, I may be wrong.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. The engineer had said that they were using the existing footprint of the old one under the idea that that allowed them to get over it without cutting away any dunes. If there is one already in that place, then they can't use that. The second thing, and I think Vanessa brought it up, and maybe Nick can address this, is are you allowed to have, or do you have a use right on their plat to build a boardwalk?
That is not, as a speaking for the applicant, that was not our intended purpose.
Okay.
I think it should be tabled, like Steven said, because I think
Ours
the
is
trajectory
supposed
is
to be on
wrong.
our property, and Grand Caribbean is supposed to be on their property.
Yeah, and so I think the engineer's already requested that it's tabled.
Okay.
Who allowed- who does not allow for that?
Any other commissioners have any comments? Then do we need to vote on tabling it?
Rick, I will yield to you, but I don't think we need to. I think he can just pull it.
Yeah, I mean, Will, if you just want to remove it from further consideration, then we don't just bring it as a new item when you're ready.
Bring it next month. Thank you. Okay,
Good job, Frank.
Back to you, Nick.
Thank you, Frank.
Yes, sir.
Item 4.7, discuss and take appropriate action on PPLT and FPLT 20-0762 Rock Cottages Townhomes. Applicant, we don't need to go there. Laughing Rock LLC, property location 603 Avenue G. Go ahead, Rick.
We did have Devin Bacta on the call, who's with Alex Harris. He indicated at the beginning, so they are on the call.
All right. So again, we'll go to the documents. This is, I think most everybody's familiar with the site. If not, Nicole, you want to go ahead and Google Earth.
Sorry, it's
there.
Literally where the Rock Cottages was.
Exactly. So this is a 35 unit, I think 35 units, you guys, 34 units, correct me if I'm wrong. Townhouse project. Like I said, you see the, you kind of see the layout. I'm trying to get there. There was a discussion, somebody had said something about drainage, but I do want to point you to, it's 112 of my package, but there is a relatively detailed water drainage storm drain plan that meets the definition of our subdivision 21-161, which says they need to provide some relatively accurate drainage plan. So like I said, with
Rick, say that again, and I lost you for a second.
Right. Well, there was this, somebody had made a comment early on in the comment period regarding drainage, and I don't think there's any question that this is a challenging piece of property with respect to drainage. But if you look at like I said, it's page 112 of mine, but it's. Are
you referring to the preliminary plat?
Correct. Right. That does show some of the infrastructure utilities and, like I said, storm drain plan. So, like I said, the threshold isn't terribly high, but it does require that there be some provision for you guys to see to show that drainage can be obtained. And like I said, this is pretty consistent with what we would normally get at this stage. There's another bite at the apple when the civil plan comes in that usually provides greater detail. But like I said, when you look at this level, I think there is a pretty good plan for, water, sewer, and drainage. So, like I said, it's not as detailed as a civil plan, but the ordinance doesn't require that it go to that level for the plat. So,
let me make sure this is muted.
Did you finish your meeting? Huh?
I'm sorry. Oh.
So I guess
anyway, so that's basically what we've got. If again, it is a pretty straightforward subdivision plan. Somebody had mentioned the setbacks, but again, if you look at the Avenue G side, those actually become rear setbacks with the configuration. And we always look at that based on how the lot is configured. And so that is a rear setback.
those aren't lots, though. There's building sites. That's not the rear of the property. Just
They're
pointing that
townhome
out.
lots, they're fee simple lots.
Yeah, they are.
They're not lots. They're building sites. They are fee simple, but they're not lots.
Well, I don't know what to say. I mean, if it's fee simple and they show the boundary, if it's not a lot, what is it?
It's a building site.
It's a townhome, which
it's a fee simple building site. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they own the ground underneath, but they're building sites set within a lot. So the lot itself is the whole thing. We've hashed this out before, and I don't agree with the city's finding. But go ahead.
Right, we're talking about a condo, one lot with building sites. I agree with that on a condominium, but
no, it's not. Townhomes are on one lot with building sites set forth. I know this to be true, but go ahead.
Well, let me let the engineer speak to the project then, and
okay.
That's not the way I'm looking at it. I look at it as
I know. We've been through this with the other one down at the end of the station.
With individual water taps and sewer taps and.
Yes.
But
that doesn't have anything to do with the lot versus the building.
Do I have a developer or engineer that
I mean, when the last townhome project we did, it was the city's position that they had to be lots. So these are intended to be lots. Same they were for the last home project we submitted. I mean, we're just trying to do what the city
on station. I agree.
Who's saying?
I remember that happening, but I still don't agree that that's true.
That was Stephen Grunwald. He's with Urban Engineering, the applicant.
I know who Stephen is.
Sorry, I didn't introduce myself.
That's okay. You're the only one we can't see, so.
Is this done under some sort of cottage unit development, or is this how
just
are we
townhouses?
Just townhouses. So that allows for I mean, it looks like they're 1,780 square foot.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, it does allow for that.
Code. Like, what ordinance does that fall under? Just out of curiosity.
There's a townhouse ordinance that covers all of that.
Okay. Thanks.
Can I get just one quick question? So it's a 10-foot building setback off of Avenue G?
Yes, sir.
The concept of that is because just like in that last one we went round and round on, because it's the back of a house, you only have to be 10 feet. That's usually to another lot, a rear yard setback, but it's on a right of way.
Well, I mean, we talked
I don't agree
to
with it.
city staff about it, and there's been I don't know if you want to call it a push, but an effort is being considered to reduce the setbacks, whether it's a front or a rear, on some of these streets, similar to that one project on Allister. I can't remember.
Tito's.
Yes. So that's kind of adhering to that concept that the city is mentioned as well as conforming to what the standard 10-foot setback would be.
But that was to try to promote pedestrian type access to those buildings, where this is just going to be back porches, air conditioning units and the like. Am I correct? With no access to the back because it's a rear setback?
And no driveways.
Their
There will
driveway.
be porches. There will be porches in
Right.
that area. It's more kind of like a view corridor from those porches to the street. No access of any kind. But
Obviously,
it is what would be the standard setback for a lot.
a fence, though, I'm sure, because it's the backyard.
I think they've got an ornamental short fence, picket fence type thing planned. If Alex is on the line, he might be able to speak to that.
If he is on the line, he needs to unmute himself.
Right. So what we're talking about is a build to, and it's a concept that should be incorporated into like the whole city plan or like a section of the city along these corridors. But in the meantime, until that's been decided by the community how we want these to be, we're talking about basically giving exceptions to the rule. And that's what we're looking at here, is an exception by giving a 10-foot setback from a major corridor.
Having
To look at somebody's backyard.
having sought similar things in the past, I would agree with Vanessa on this. This is a pretty large exception.
Variance.
Yeah, and we're not doing variances, right?
No, we are not seeking a variance. We're considering that the rear building setback for these lots, and its standard is 10 feet,
variance.
so that's what we're showing.
Variance is the way I see it.
Right. But the lot is actually lot 1, block 1, Rock Cottages townhomes. That's the lot.
Each of these townhome units will be an individual fee simple lot.
Nicole, can you point me in the direction?
No, they're not. They're building sites, and the building site should be set forth on the lot within the parameters of the setbacks. Otherwise, we're talking about a variance.
But that's not the way that it's laid out, though. These are fee simple lots. It's not one lot with
I
buildings.
understand what they are, Rick. Believe me, I understand what they are.
Well,
but
you
the
keep
lot
saying that it's fee
itself
simple,
is
but it's not a
described.
lot.
It is described in the legal description. It's lot 1, block 1.
Right, and then there's lot 2.
And lot 1, block 2.
One.
Well,
And the
lot
building
one, block
sites,
one is
just
the
like your
townhome.
home building site, should be within the setbacks.
I mean, there's a townhome portion of this development, and then there's a non-townhome portion, and that's why there's a lot 1, block 1, and a lot 1, block 2.
Yes,
If
I
we
understand, but every
mistakenly
townhome,
describe that-
description ends with a lot and block description.
Well, each of the townhome sites have a lot and a block on it.
No, it's a building site as described by a declaration and then reference onto the lot. But I'm just saying, I think it's a variance that we're looking at. And we went round and round on this last time, and I didn't
Vanessa,
agree with the
tell
outcome
me
last time
tell me
either.
what the variance is that you think we're giving.
The 10-foot setback from G.
Why is that a variance? That is the rear. Lot configurations dictate the front side and
What I'm saying is I am saying that in my mind, the lot is the whole thing. The lot 1, block 1. And what you're saying is that the building sites are lots.
I'm saying with
And I'm
legally what they've
saying that in
submitted
my
are fee
mind,
simple
it's not,
lots.
that's,
35 different owners 34 different owners can feasibly live there
yes, I understand.
with their own lot, not a site in a condominium.
No, actually, they are called building sites. But we're going to agree to disagree on this because now we're going around in circles. I'm just saying, I think that we're looking at a variance. In my perspective, as a commissioner, that's my perspective.
Rick, this is Alex Harris.
Thanks, Alex. Yes, go ahead.
If you look at the plat, we're getting feedback, sorry, but on one side, you see lot 1, block 2. The other half of this property is various lots, block 1. That's why you're getting confused seeing lot 1, block 2, when this is really lots 1 through 34, block 1. And those are rear setbacks on those properties. And the front setbacks are along the street side.
It's two different sites is what you're saying.
Yes, they're two different, it's one plat. One will be completely cleared. The other one will be 34 lots within block 1. The other one's within block 2.
Well, in my mind, if they
I
were
wasn't even-
lots, they'd be
I didn't see the
3,000
lot
square
1, block
feet.
2.
Can I go a
30
little bit
foot of
different
access.
direction on this? I mean, if this was just a single lot on Avenue G, just a single resident lot that intended purpose was to put a house on, and somebody submitted a plan and put the back of their house on Avenue G, is that where we're coming up with the logic that makes the front building setback off of Avenue G 10 feet?
But
and
then
not-
you'd have to have a public street, right, to be the front. You'd have to have a
Or a
dedicated street with access to the front.
Or a private street.
Right,
Depends-
private street. In other words, you couldn't have more than, you wouldn't want anybody backing out onto G anyway, so we would require the circulation be internal. So you've got, just like it has here, you have a driveway coming in, makes a right. If it was nothing other than this first bank of lots, the front would be internal, the rear would be on Avenue G, and rather, I can't speak to whether we like it on Avenue G or not, but we don't have any way to say that if they configure their lots this way, that's not the rear. It does become the rear.
Right, but we'd also make them have 30 foot of frontage and a 3,000 minimum square feet.
Not in a townhouse, 16 feet.
Right, because they're not lots.
But that is a townhouse
That's exactly
lot.
what I'm saying.
That's
why
a
they're not
townhouse
held to
lot.
that standard.
But the ordinance specifies a townhouse lot can be smaller than the 30-foot lot.
Where is the townhouse ordinance?
Section 21-128, it sounds, I mean, it shows you that lot building lines. And it tells you townhouse lot can't be less than 16 feet.
Does it state in there that your secondary road, the private road, it's just a conditioned response to me on the building setback off of a main thoroughfare is 10 feet. Is it, because I remember at one point Laughing Horse was entertaining doing some kind of a development, and that was a big question. I mean,
They were denied, yeah.
You know, we don't differentiate between G or D, or it's always based on the lot configuration, you know, how that lot is positioned. And
Okay.
in this case, it happens to be G.
I was just wanting to get clarity. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, notwithstanding the above, a townhouse development, the shortest distance between side lot lines, not side sight lines, but side lot lines, excluding applicable side yard setback requirements, shall be 16 feet, no minimum for depth.
Mr. Chairman, if you look across the street on the picture, those have the same setbacks on those, where the front of those 4 white houses, that's the front where the cars are parked, and the rear has the same setback we're asking for here.
I got you. I just wanted clarity.
Right, and so that's what we talked about when we talked about Laughing Horse Lodge when they came before us, because of this property across the street was given the build to kind of consideration, which we kind of want, but that the city itself has not really addressed widespread that we want that. So then it kind of was like, well, we gave it to them. Now we got to give it to them. So now I guess we got to give it to them.
That's not, that's originally with the Laughing Horse plat, that was not the reason they were denied.
Right.
They had encroachment issues on Trojan that weren't able to be.
But that was definitely part of the discussion and the consideration was this property across the street with the build to and Citas with the build to. And we do have, I think, some consensus that maybe that is what we want on these corridors is a build to. but that needs to be part of our master plan. And in the meantime, we're looking at a variance, just like with the property across the street.
Well, I can tell you from
So
staff,
let's just call it what it is.
yeah, well, I'd gladly tell you it was a variance if it was, but it's staff's opinion that it's not a variance. This is a standard setback. We don't differentiate between an Avenue G or anything else.
Right.
There was a variance for the Old Town cottages to make that setback less than the front setback less than 20 feet to prevent parking. But that was a variance granted. This isn't they're not asking for a variance here. That is the rear based on this lot configuration. These lots, the way they're configured, that is the rear.
So how big a deal would it be to, and not talking about, what is technically allowable or not, but how big a deal would it be to make these units along Avenue G accessible from the rear and give everybody a front porch that they can look down Avenue G and see the beach from?
Well, you
I don't
don't
think
have
that
any.
We don't want people backing out onto Avenue G.
No, that's what I'm saying is make all the parking accessible from the rear.
We actually,
Yeah, but then you have a
come
front
to us
yard
and said, what would
setback.
we want them to do? We would have made them put this internal drive to prevent them from entering and backing off onto G. We would have made them do that.
Right. So that's what I'm saying is access the units from the back from their private drive.
Yeah, but then your front yard of that lot is on Avenue G and your setback goes back to 25
20
feet.
feet.
Right. Which it seems to me, to Vanessa's point, that maybe that's.
But that can't be your front because we don't want the entry off of G. We want an internal, we want them entering internally.
That's what I'm saying is.
So that becomes the rear.
What if they entered their units from the rear?
When you say rear,
Which they will, that really is the front. I mean, it is the front.
You mean as a pedestrian, Garrett, not as a vehicle off of G?
Right. Well, I meant as a vehicle come into their private drive in the back of the unit. If the back of the unit was on the, if the rear, if the lots 1 through 12 were flipped, and so the front of these homes faces Avenue G, then the parking, you just pull into the back side of the house.
the backside being the internal side.
The internal
I
side,
think
that's
it's
correct.
right. I think it's going to minimize their access easement is the problem. The access easement becomes too narrow.
Because they're 10 foot off of the internal side now.
But there is 5 more feet, and the other access easement is 40 feet wide versus the 8 more feet, 32 feet wide. So maybe you could get 8 more feet out of the front.
Can I say something? The beach club property across the street, that has a 10-foot setback also, just like Shell's, if you see down there. And Beach Club actually is an example of what they're doing here. Beach Club units, the back of the units are on Avenue G, and then we did a private drive and parking off of 11th Street. It's the same condition. The back of beach clubs are on Avenue G with a 10-foot setback. And then you enter off of G to get back to the private drive, private road, and all the parking on the backside. So it's consistent with Beach Club across the street, which was not.
Yes.
I can't recall if those are individual detached houses, but that's neither here nor there.
The beach club across the street, you're saying that the back of that building is 10 feet from the right of way?
No, the building setback was, I had the opportunity to go that far back. I put the pool there instead.
Okay.
But we could have done what you're describing, but just provoking thought, we could have done just the opposite of what you're describing, and it would have been, it's okay. It's 10, there's a 10-foot setback. off of Avenue G. And you can see it where Shells is. I don't think it's delineated on the,
But Nick, that's because that was your rear, based on the way the lot was configured.
there, that was the way it was platted moons ago. It had nothing to do with my rear pointing to the street. But I'm just saying that the setback is the same. The building setback is the same than what's on this proposed project. So,
So is that, so am I seeing on page?
And that was given through a variance.
I can't answer that. I didn't get one to do the project.
Karen, what were you saying?
This is showing a
Just
20 foot.
On page 114, I show a 20-foot building line.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking at right now too.
Well, that is based on the plat. That's not based on what's actually there. I think you'd find that the pools actually straddle that line.
Right, but I
If
mean,
you actually saw the improvements.
right, but I mean, you can put a pool over.
Pool's in a setback.
Yeah, pools can go all the way to the property line.
Nick is saying that there's a 10-foot setback there, but this plat is showing that there's a 20-foot setback there.
And that's what I was saying, is that the plat doesn't agree with that. But I mean, I'm not saying it's right. It's just what's on
Right,
my-
it's a representation of the plat.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, what's your position?
Well, we're not even going to talk about lots and units because I think it's more, it sounds like this works because of our townhome ordinance, and we wrestled this with that one on Station, if y'all recall, where by townhome definition, the rear of the property, that's a rear yard setback, which that's consistent with what we did on, that's just consistent on what we did on Endless Summer on Alex's project down there. The only difference is, if you recall, we had a hard time with the fact, who cares what back and the front is, and staff and Parsons was adamant that defines the 10-foot rear setback. If you recall, they had them at 5 foot on the sides, but they were the back of the townhomes. And the only difference in this, and they redid their plat, and they're according to the rear of the townhome rear yard setback being 10 foot, even though the plat showed 5 foot setbacks on that lot because they didn't know townhomes were going to be on there. So it's consistent with what staff and Dave Parsons has said and what they did at Endless Summer.
Yes, it is.
I don't believe I
I'm
was around for this last round of this property on Station that everyone keeps referencing. Is that Endless Summer? Is that same project?
That's correct.
Okay, so I don't believe I was here for that. It sounds like everyone kind of cussed and discussed it quite a bit. Was that structured the same way that these rock cottages were, as far as townhomes with these 1,800 square foot lots and
Yes.
whatnot?
The only difference, Clark, is
In the end, yes.
The only difference is it was on the only street frontage, public street frontage was Station. So they went down the sides originally on each side of the lot, going into the lot off the Station, and they proposed the townhomes backing up on the side yard setbacks, which on the plat were 5. But because of the townhome ordinance, the reality is the back of the, by default, they're 10. Because I was arguing the other way, just because I'm going, a house, an inanimate object, and a human being doesn't know what the back of a house is. I mean, I'd argue that till hell freezes over, but I'm over it, you know?
Yeah, I got one from him.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, That, I was also part of that development and we had to change that.
Yes,
so
I
that-
remember.
Because David Parsons wanted that to be 10 feet rear.
No, and that's exactly my point. The only difference, Clark, on this one is they're not putting the back of townhomes on Station. Whereas this one has, Avenue G, and they're putting the back on, they're taking the same approach that they did on that lot to where the existing 5-foot side yard building setback by definition was not a side yard, it was a rear yard.
Okay, thank you.
Hopefully that was almost clear.
Somewhat.
So
kind of.
Is there a max density in this townhome ordinance?
I think it's the same as all of our density ordinances. And what is it, Rick or Stephen?
I think technically this project is zoned commercial, so I think it's 12, 14, maybe more units per acre.
Oh, somebody's got to know that. Well, what is the acreage in the
Of the lot.
3.4.
There's 34 units on 3.41 acres, so it's just under 10 units per acre.
right, which is way under any density requirement.
Right.
Okay, well, I move that we disapprove this proposal for the Laughing Rock or wherever the hell they call it.
Okay, sorry, I stepped away for just a second. That was a motion to deny?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Based on what, Frank?
Based on the fact that I shouldn't even have to answer that question, Robert, but based on the fact that we still don't know a lot about what's going on. We don't know. Here's one question that I looked at when I thought about when I looked at the proposal. How do emergency vehicles get in there?
The paving width is 26 feet, which meets the required width for even extended stories. Turning radiuses are adequate. There's room for fire or emergency vehicles to get in there.
Okay, glad to hear that. I still move for disapproving this. This is an area that has, we certainly had units there before the storm, but the density that you're proposing is, I think, just too much for what's needed in that area, especially since it backs up to, and the side unit part of it is in residential units. So I'm opposed to it.
Tell you what, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? No second?
Well, there you go.
Vanessa.
Let's continue discussion. Can we not?
Yes.
So I actually have a little bit of a question. Stephen, I see between the units 1, 2, 3, so on, and 13, 14, 15, 16, there's a drive, a 12-foot wide drive. And then between units, the last row that backs up to the residential units 22 through 34, there's no, I mean, the lots go all the way out. There's no street there that I can see.
The private street is actually on the lot itself.
Okay.
And in all cases, it's 26 feet wide. In some instances, there's a 40-foot access and utility easement where there's a lot on either side. But for the row of lots along Avenue G, only that section along Avenue G fronts on that private street. So there's a reduced access and utility easement there.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
Well, but so here's my point to that is if the lot is on the street, you're basically got some sort of shared access or use agreement. Like if you had an actual private street there, these lots wouldn't be large enough to fit a townhome requirement. So I'm
It is the provisions in the townhome requirement that require to have a 20-foot, at least a 20-foot front setback that led us in Endless Summer to come up with this concept of the lots going to the center of the street actually being in an access and utility easement.
Okay, so your build line is 40 foot on the front lots between row 2 and 3.
Correct.
But when you put
So
how
you've got
wide is the intended street? So I mean, I guess I see how the lot's laid out, but if you had an actual street there, I mean, I don't know.
well, I think it still meets the minimum square foot requirement, Robert. But
yeah,
because-
as long as there's,
But because of how they, it's all private road, right?
Yeah,
So
they're
because they do
dedicating-
that,
they're
it just
dedicating-
limits It just limits the size of the townhome.
right.
Correct.
So they're dedicating a portion of each lot between 2 and 3 that
Precisely.
front that private drive to be used for the driveway.
Right.
Correct.
And there's nothing legally wrong with that or ordinance wrong with that.
Right. No, I'm just clarifying to make sure that's the intention.
Right. It just
Exactly
makes
right,
the
Albert.
areas around the actual units really, really tiny.
Small, right.
Yeah. So you got like 5 feet between the
Right.
street
So
and
the
front door.
perception of that house may be that it sits 5 feet off of the road, or 10 feet off the road.
Do we know what
Because
the parking is going to look like for this
We
development?
don't.
But the road is private property. I mean, it's not a public street or anything. I mean, the only people using it are going to be the owners and their neighbors and possibly emergency vehicles. But that's
Emergency vehicles are
really
what
interesting.
concern me.
They'll have access. I mean, they have access along those
They've got to have
corridors.
20-foot, they've got to have 20-foot paved travelway unrestricted, and that's pretty similar
Yes.
to what we did with that other project, Endless Summer.
I'm
Same
gonna
kind of
jump
thing.
in and answer Clark's question about parking. On note number 7, it does say 4 residential parking spaces will be available in the driveway and under the unit.
Okay, thanks, Nicole.
And they'd still be subject to our same parking ordinance, 1 per bedroom regardless.
Correct.
Hey, Rick, when I'm looking at page 114 in our packet of the plat, it looks like the 34 units are built on 1.79 acres,
Yeah, it's half the full piece.
not three.
Oh, yeah, that's totally different. So maybe it is beyond the density. Because it's a separate platted lot than lot 1.
Well, it's half of lot 1.
No, it's lot 2. Well, maybe that's a misnomer. Oh, lot 1, block 1, lot 1, block 2.
So, yeah, so are these equal size blocks, Stephen?
No, the top one's 1.62 if you look at that.
So it fits as long as you never, ever, ever develop lot 1, block 2.
Well, what is the maximum density for this commercial area, Nicole or Rick?
For
21 per
residential
acre?
use, it's be the same in our development code, which is 21 per acre.
Well, then it's okay.
We're 1.7 acres, so you're 30 units on 1.5. I mean, they're right there.
You're at 18.99 units
Yeah.
per acre if you just look at the 1.74 acres.
Right.
that
So he's
these
under
34 units
21,
are on.
Vanessa.
I'm sorry, how many was it per acre?
18.99.
Really?
Yeah, what is it, 1.76?
1.79.
Yeah, divided by 34 units.
Yep, I come up with 32, but I'll let you double check that.
I can't believe we're approving something like this. I just cannot believe it.
I mean, if you just take the 1.79 times 21, you get 37.59. So round down to 37, you're still.
Oh, wait, so it's 21 per acre?
We're
21 per
allowed
acre.
21 per acre. What he's
Okay, that's
getting is
different.
18.99 is what they're proposing.
Right.
Hey, I'm gonna take the floor just for a second and ask Rick a question or two. Obviously how compact, how T90, et cetera, is not why we're here. We're here to clarify and make sure that this meets our ordinances. And Rick, does this meet our ordinances based on staff's review and study?
Yes, sir.
So I'm gonna, we're not really gonna talk about, if density is fine, which I think the math obviously worked. From the commissioner end, we need to talk about anything that is not esoteric, but anything that does not meet our ordinances like parking, et cetera. And does anybody have any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have a thought, Nick, and again, this kind of goes back to why I asked Frank, because I wanted to get an understanding on, you know, his findings as to why we would deny the petition for this. You know, I think, again, because I don't like it, isn't a good reason. So that's why we've been talking about fire lanes, parking, density, things of that nature, to make sure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. You know, obviously this is one of those that we've run across in the past 2 to 3 years that I've been here that are unfavorable, just because of the density of the development. So again, you know, I look at it as my duty to if I'm going to disprove it or disallow it, I need to have a basis for why it doesn't conform to our ordinances. And I mean, again, that's why I feel the questions are going on.
I understand.
Well, and I will help smooth this over and say that, you know, even though I disagree with the interpretation, I feel like the developer did prepare it in good faith based on what they've been told and what they've been rewarded for in the past. And I don't see how we can, I am not inclined to disapprove it based on their good faith effort.
So you're
It
asking
doesn't-
me,
And
Does not meet the setbacks.
25, 1.
unfortunately, to speak to what Robert and Vanessa said, I'm trying to shoot holes in it because it's not favorable, in my opinion, for the density and the location. But if it meets all the criteria, I think, you know, then it meets all the criteria.
Which, if it does meet all the criteria, and we all kind of, I feel like, have a very similar opinion of what we would want there and what we don't want there, I think maybe that means that we need to create another ordinance, or maybe does that mean that we need to modify what is allowed right now to avoid what is developed in the future?
You know, here's the challenge is that, you know, you work at the pleasure of the council. So I mean, I think that the comments, I understand, you know, again, if density is becoming an issue, then perhaps members of planning and zoning should be the ones that are there at council and say, we approve this because our ordinance states that. But the discussions are going on and on about our concern for density. And, you know, you don't feel, for whatever reason, if I don't want to put words in your mouth, but just say, we don't feel that's the direction the city should continue to go. Whatever it is, you've got to get counsel.
Right, but that has no reflection on this
one, not at all.
At all.
Based on our ordinance right now.
Right.
No,
So,
it doesn't.
I mean,
But you're asking, you know, but Clark was, I think, alluding to the fact that, you know, you got to change the ordinance. Well, I'm trying to give you a path forward. Is that, you know, you've got to get council to give you the direction. I think you had it on the CUD, and as soon as we get, past these virtual meetings and the others, I think that we can look at the CUD ordinance. I think that they've given us that direction. And we'll get to that. Like I said, hopefully not in a virtual fashion where we can actually sit down and look at drawings and talk about it. But I think this is another issue, is that if that's the case, is that, like I said, I don't feel strongly one way or the other than just saying this meets our current ordinances. And that's what I'm compelled to tell you. They submitted it based on the guidelines that exist today, and there it stands.
Right. And even though I disagree that it does meet our current ordinances, I think that the developer has put forth what they've been instructed is appropriate. So that's all they can do.
I'd agree. I would agree with you guys. And I feel like it's our responsibility to invite council to review it. And we recommend it.
Gary and Clark, I appreciate what you just said. And I will say in response to you, Robert, I think that we need to stand up and say, wait a minute, when they were wanting to do that development on 12th Street, Stephen Greenwald told the council that we, the P&Z, had approved the drainage ordinance. We don't do that. That's not in our purview at all. And there are things that we need to stand up and say, wait a minute, the city needs to look at these things. And I am not going to stop doing that. And even if I'm not on the P&Z anymore, I'm going to stand up and say, wait a minute, this is something we need to look at. So that's my response to you.
I think that complements everything that we've learned and been taught, but council is the one to give us that assignment.
I understand that. And I think the council needs to really look at what we're charged with, because there are a number of things that we should look at, I think, as P&Z, before we present it to the council. We don't understand everything. We don't know everything, but Nick, you in particular know a lot about construction and building and ordinances, and you are a real asset to us, and we need to listen to those issues that we're not necessarily charged with looking at, but you need to bring them up, and you need to say, we need to look at this as a P&Z. And I think you can do that.
I do not have a problem. Obviously, we all do, including people that are listening as taxpayers, inviting council to give us an assignment. And that's, everybody here has been through frustrations when you start, because we do a lot of different things. Some of it's almost a rubber stamp, more of a protocol. But when it gets into something about, if we get the assignment of coming up with ordinances, number one, it doesn't happen in 1 or 2 meetings. But if they give us that assignment, that is another piece of our responsibility.
That's exactly right.
Starting to provoke that. Everybody should, if that's their feeling as a taxpayer.
That's exactly right.
But that's the appropriate protocol for doing this.
That's exactly right. And we just have to say, we need to look at these other issues as well when we're trying to make a decision. I mean, I remember issues out on 361 with wetland issues. We need to know what's going on with the wetland issues before we can present something to the city council. And we don't have that.
We're doing a better job on that. The engineers are doing a better job on that, because the Corps put their foot down quite a bit in the last 5 years. And I really do believe you're seeing much less mitigation and more working around the wetlands and the emerging wetlands. And I think that's a compliment to the same things you're talking about we need to do now.
Well, you're right.
So I'd invite a motion if we have one, if one's available. I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval on, bear with me, PPLT and FPLT 200762 Rock Cottages Townhomes. Do we have a second?
Second.
That was Jay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Clark Smith?
Yes.
Garrett Kipke?
Yes.
Jay Jones?
Yes.
Vanessa Brundrett?
Yes.
And Frank Morgan?
No.
Robert Tips?
Yes.
And Nick Lorette?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I was asked if, Nicole, would you still like a 5-minute break?
No, I snuck out. I'm good.
Ah, okay. I wondered if you had.
Okay, guys, item 4.8. Discuss and take appropriate action on PPLT and FPLT 200970 Mahi Bay CUD. Rick? Did we go quiet?
Hang on, I'm sorry. Let me get there real quick. So this is this our landing?
No, this is Mahi Bay, the one right before that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mahi Bay. So Nicole, let you go to Google Earth. So this is a property that is right off Paradise Point. Actually, as you go to the Paradise Point subdivision, the first row of houses to your right, that would be the to the rear of their property would be where this property, one of the boundary lines. So this is a cottage unit development. Speaking of that, consists of approximately 75 sites, if I got that correct. And I'll let the engineers jump in there if I miscounted. I believe it's 75 lots.
I don't know if this is exact.
I'm sorry?
What I'm showing you guys, I don't know if that's exact. That's the general area of it.
Let's see.
So didn't we talk about earlier looking at the CUD ordinance?
We did, but you have it, and this has been submitted.
Yeah, no.
So I am presenting. It is like I said, it is a larger cottage unit development. Most of the lots, I don't know that I can tell you every one, but I don't know that I saw one that wasn't of a size that would have been allowed irrespective of the cottage unit development.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're all in excess of 3,000 feet. Like I said, I didn't see one that wasn't, but so that, like I said, my page 128, the exhibit is pretty straightforward as far as the layout. There is much as we saw in the last one, a fairly comprehensive drainage plan, again, showing the locations of the inlets, the conveyance mechanisms, the RCP. So like I said, there's a pretty good, as is required, preliminary drainage plan per the plat. Actually, if you find that on the page, on here, bear with me. It moves kind of slow. Page 132 is probably the more detailed of the drainage plans. Like I said, it is pretty straightforward. It is a cottage unit development, like I said, although the lots do seem to be consistent with our minimum size. Let me just leave it at that and see if there's any specific questions that you have. That, that's
Wasn't there some question, Rick, about needing a U.S. Corps of Engineers permit because of the wetlands area there?
What we settled on a while back, what you guys kind of helped get through, was a requirement that any project in excess of a half acre requires we notify the Corps of Engineers. I'm not aware of any wetlands, but again, it's that same kind of debate. Is it with us having no regulatory authority, nor the ability to identify wetlands if they aren't there? Basically, where it ended up was the ordinance was modified to require that we do send notice to the Army Corps that there's a development happening, anything over a half acre, regardless of where it's located, and put them on notice. So
This is Stephen Grunwald with Urban Engineering.
Hey, Stephen.
There actually are wetlands on this property, and the owner is working with HDR and in the process of getting a delineation and a core permit approved based on the layout you see here. So
I think that's on page 134 of my package. They show some of the existing wetlands there.
Yeah, there's 4.
Yeah, so pending that,
But they worked around pretty good.
Everything is subject to their regulatory authority. If they don't work that out and that becomes a wetlands, then they have to come back and like I said, that or work around them.
I guess my only question is if every lot meets the standards for a regular platted lot, why the CUD?
That's how you get private streets. That's the only vehicle for that.
I mean, I like it, but because that
Well,
means
I mean,
they're
neighborhood unit
allowed
development. I mean,
short-term,
there's
right?
some, but CUD was probably appropriate to get those private streets.
Yeah, and a CUD means no short term, right?
No.
No, that's
Zoning does.
dependent on zoning. This is in, I believe this is tourist recreation.
You're thinking
I thought that
you're thinking flexible development. Flexible development means no short-term rentals. CUD doesn't have anything to do with that.
Cottage unit development's right.
Vanessa? Quick kind of history. The CUD came before the city invited us to study and get with them on smaller fee simple lots. So it came before, and it is similar. I don't, they're basically similar. They're both required to have 30-foot wide street front. I beg your pardon, CUD is not required. It's required to have 3,000 square feet, but not 30 square feet, I believe. Am I right on that?
2,500.
A CUD can go down as low as a 2,500 square foot lot if a 1-for-1 trade-off for true recreational space that's also defined is offered.
But my point is that there is some overlap in them. They're similar, but the CUD is just a friendly tool to do private roads to city ordinance, and I mean they work for, like, the Port Street CUD is single family.
So that was voluntarily given by Port Street. The no daily, weekly rentals.
Of a CUD working for, I mean, as long-term or single family.
But that was voluntary, right? With Port Street.
But the developer volunteered it, yeah.
A CUD has to be in an R2 or above, so by definition, it can always be short-term rental.
We restricted it in the deed restrictions.
And so the layout of this one does avoid the existing wetlands that they've identified. So like I said, if any of that were to change, then obviously the layout would change. But what you see here, I think I'm saying, Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I think it's pretty apparent that this is in avoidance of those identified wetlands. And if
they've not gotten a Corps of Engineers permit, is that right?
We do not have a final permit, no. But our impacts are less than or equal to 1/10 of an acre. We're confident we can get a nationwide permit. We've gotten nationwide permits on multiple projects for that limit of impacts for similar type of wetlands. So we don't think it'll be an issue, but as Rick said, for some reason, if they don't give us an approval, we've got to figure out a new layout or a new plan and come back.
So,
but we avoided the majority of the wetlands. And like I said, we've limited our impacts to 1/10 of an acre, which is qualified.
Those are nationwide, right, Stephen?
Yes.
Stephen, can you tell me, did y'all do a traffic impact analysis on this, on how that's going to affect the intersection of Paradise Point and 361?
No.
Are they required to
qualify that? I don't think I've ever done a traffic impact analysis on any project at Port A. Not that, I mean, I don't think it's part of the current regulations.
But it's important, and I move that we disapprove this until we get the Corps of Engineers permit, and we'll go from there.
Do we have a second? Help me out on protocol, guys. I'm not the best. Can we have
Robert's rules? I mean,
if the motion's open.
Right. If there's not a second, then the motion fails for lack of a second.
Well, I hadn't heard yet. Do we have a second? Somebody?
I've already asked. Anybody? Okay, I don't think that one's going to work, sir. Rick, on how is our ordinance set up? I mean, I know how we've done it before. We've paralleled tasks to where engineers have come in with this type of development, and obviously it's contingent on the Corps' approval of it, right?
Correct. Like I said, since we have no regular authority over the wetlands, we don't have any ability to punish, nor can we make those determinations ourselves. Where we ended up from a city standpoint was, like I said, we did get, you guys actually did push through an ordinance that it does require we send the Corps notice of development. So whether they were actively seeking the Corps permit or not, we put the Corps on notice that, you know, hey, there's a development going in. We give them the same information, sites and locations. So, but we have to leave it to the Corps there to take action, not take action. We don't have any stick with respect to wetlands. The penalties are pretty stiff. I mean, I think the developers and certainly the engineers explain that to their clients. The penalties, as we've seen with some developers around here, they paid a pretty steep price, even when it was inadvertent. So, like I said, that's not the check and balance we want to rely on. So, I mean, I was glad to see that ordinance got approved a few years ago. That
right. But I guess my follow-up question to that is, we do not, our city ordinance, just based on what you said, we cannot require the applicant. It's none of our business other than we know that the Corps is on record and the engineer for the project has already stated that they're actively working on it, but we do not have a situation. I'm asking for Frank and for me, but it's based on his motion. There's no stipulation.
We put that responsibility back on the developers.
It's not a contingency on approving this proposed cut is my question.
Yeah, that responsibility always historically has fallen on the engineer and the developer. Their non-compliance is subject to an authority above ours. So it's never been a part of our approval piece, other than the fact that any half acre or greater development triggers that requirement to notify them.
So based on that and staff and Hanson's review, what is staff's recommendation?
Right. Staff, again, recommends approval, as you noted, that's consistent with the reviewing engineer's interpretation of the submission as well.
What, would you repeat that, please, Rick?
Well, I was going to say, since it meets the criteria that staff recommends approval, and we haven't mentioned the reviewing engineer, but again, we send all of these plats to a secondary engineer for review, and we don't recommend that without them reconciling approvals with the submitting engineer. So,
okay.
In Hanson's words, the preliminary plat adheres to the City of Port Aransas Code of Ordinances.
And the final plat. And I just want to read, it does say directly in our ordinance, it says it's the sole responsibility of the property owner to determine whether or not their proposed development activity impacts wetlands that are under the jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay, and Nick, thank you for clarifying what you did. I appreciate that.
You bet. Thank you. Does any commissioners have any other questions or concerns?
I'd just like to make a comment, and then I'm going to make a motion. And, I think Vanessa kind of alluded to this early on, is that, these lots are 3,000 square feet, which is larger than what you would traditionally see in a CUD. They can go down another 500 square foot a lot. Remember too, that part of the CUD limits these buildings to 2 stories, which gives you a better skyline profile, kind of less obtrusive in my mind. I think the developer's done a good job not oversizing the houses on a smaller lot. And then, these things aren't going to be super tall. So, I think it's actually, all things being said, a pretty good consideration. And I would like to put a motion out there to approve PPLT FPLT 20-0970 Mahi Bay.
I will second Vanessa.
All right, Frank Morgan,
No.
Robert Tips,
Yes.
Vanessa Brundrett,
Yes.
Jay Jones,
Yes.
Garrett Kipke,
Yes.
Clark Smith,
Yes.
and Nick Lorette.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item 4.9, discuss and take appropriate action on PPLT and FPLT 200683, The Landing, applicant 347 Cotter LLC. I apologize, Shlomo Melul.
And he is on the call with us.
Okay, all right, welcome, sir. And property location is 347 Cotter Avenue. Rick?
Thank you. Nicole, are you there yet on the?
No, hang on just a second.
Okay. So this property actually is right behind City Hall. So a little bit of history that to maximize the development potential for this property. One of the challenges in dividing it the way they chose was having a public street. Again, a lot of the development is predicated on having access to a public street. And so that was their challenge. Not a private drive necessarily, but the public street. So what you see was with I guess what I'm looking at is, I guess page 153, or either one, I think kind of lays it out, is creating that 50-foot right-of-way sized to our specs off of Cotter within their existing property. The goal was to subdivide it into 3 lots, 1A, 2A, and 3A. But again, to maximize the potential for 3A, it needed that frontage on a public street. That's what you see. That's what you see here is Sharkway being created. The existing buildings, the apartment and the retail that you may be familiar with or are already there. The one part that, again, that we're a little concerned about, and it's referenced in both the engineers, the project engineer and our reviewing engineer, is the drainage of this project. We don't have quite the detail that we've seen in the other ones. As far as how they're going to convey the water, there's some explanations as to where this property is and the boundaries within the existing drainage basins. The actual engineer's request that we get a variance on our master drainage plan to allow certain things. We don't typically, I don't think we typically do a variance of the master drainage plan. We just, like I said, we just have the expectation that they provide an adequate drainage plan. And in this case, they reference that they're sandwiched between some existing development that already has drainage in place that limits their options. So Urban, our reviewing engineer talks about the fact that the plat generally falls within general conformance, but does reference some of the challenges that they think that they had in what they had to look at. Again, without details on the size and depth of the storm sewer not being there, the size and depth of sanitary sewer, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, for me, it's the very last page of the packet. So, like I said, that really, to me, is the only issue with this submission is just the concern that there may not be enough detail. But this has kind of gone around quite a bit. They've spent a lot of time working on it. So I will let the if what engineers are here to speak to it, Stephen.
So we have Thomas Tiffin on the phone. We've got Shlomo, the property owner, and then Mr. Jim Brissy as well, all representing this project. We've got Steven Skrabarczyk that provided the comments for urban engineering.
All right, so
are they
live or do you have to prompt them?
I'm sorry?
Are they live or do you have to prompt them?
They can hear us. Some of them have their phones muted still. Jim Brissy just turned his video on, so he's on there with us too.
So if Stephen Skrabarczyk, can you hear me?
Yes.
So let me, again, for kind of as a representative of staff, like I said, as I mentioned, we don't see quite the detail as far as, and I say detail, but we don't see quite the same drainage plan as we saw in the other plat submissions. So you want to kind of talk through, I'm not an engineer, so I don't want to speak to I don't want to say anything that's not appropriate with respect to this submission. So let me leave it there, just kind of let you talk about your review and your thoughts of the drainage, because you've been involved in this project from our city standpoint for a while.
Okay. So the master drainage plan shows some of the drainage going south. But this property is surrounded by private property to the south, so obtaining a drainage easement through there is difficult. And so the drainage should really go to Cotter instead of through the private properties. And that's just one of the requirements of developing this property. And I think that the applicant's shown some interest in working that direction, and that there isn't construction plan. There's not a construction plan ready to go yet that I've seen, but as far as what's required at this stage, I think they meet those requirements.
So let me ask you a question. So what exactly is proposed to develop back there?
Can I let the applicant speak to that?
Yeah, I can tell you from a staff perspective, Frank, we didn't get that, nor are we entitled to it if they don't have a plan yet. So, like I said, the developer, I'll sit up and let them, we'd give it to you if we had it. We don't know.
So you don't know what you're gonna do?
Right now, it's just lots. They're just breaking it into lots. The front lot has the souvenir shop already. The middle lot has the apartment complex already, and they're just breaking it into that back lot.
For what?
What's the zoning?
Commercial.
Commercial too, yeah. So I mean, so other than industrial, everything below that, from residential apartments, multifamily, it's you know, that lot 3A is a fairly large, you know, it's a fairly large tract.
So Frank, in order to do that, they have to put in that city right away to make that lot in the back. And now they can do anything with that lot that you can do in a commercial 2 zone. Whether they do it, whether they sell it to somebody to do it.
I think Jim wanted to speak and we all kind of talked over him. Jim, you want to?
3.42 acres
Rick?
is that rear tract.
Yeah, this is something that's essential before it can be developed. At this point in time, there is no long-term plan for the use of 3.4 acres that is the vacant land at the rear of the apartment building. Whatever development is proposed will certainly have to be before the city. So this is not something that's going to have to be decided at this point. If they were to request a change in zoning and actually put in residential behind that apartment building, the likely drainage would be quite different than if they were to put in some other development, such as, I don't know, maybe another apartment building. The two may have similar needs, but it's at that point in time when that need is decided that the drainage is going to be essential to figure out whether it's really going to be adequate to drain the lot. And it may well be that they have to drain everything to Cotter. I think that's probably where it's going to end up going. That's not something my client can decide at this point. My client right now would like to go ahead and have it divided up so that the development of the rear 3.4 acres is possible. At this point in time, the only way that 3.4 acres could be sold is if the apartment building and the retail center in the front along West Cotter would be sold with it. And as a practical matter, that can't be done.
2 questions. One, first of all, the whole property is the 3.41.
No, sir. It's
just the rear.
Just the rear part?
Yes,
Just 3A.
Okay. So the second question is, you don't know what you're going to do, but you're asking for a variance.
If Mr. Kiffin is available to describe that, I'm not an engineer either.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
I'm sorry, I'm not an engineer either. And so if Mr. Kiffin, I believe he was on the meeting or in the meeting.
Thomas is here. He can talk.
Yeah. So we were requested by the city to provide that variance because of, like Stephen did say, was that the drainage pattern within the master plan did have a portion of the rear part of the property draining through the private development next door. And we're not allowed to do that. So the only reason we're asking for that variance is to allow the drainage to go into the Cotter drainage area.
And let me say, this isn't a variance in the terms that we usually use a variance. It's the way our drainage plan is written. And Stephen, you maybe help me out here, or Stephen Grunwald, because I know you have some experience. Is that there are certain boundary lines with the basins, and again, so the challenge here, this falls within a drainage basin that really it can't access anymore because of the development that's already grown up around it. I think is maybe the way I interpret this, but you engineers jump in there and tell me if I'm saying that right. Stephen?
Yeah, there you go, Rick.
They're leaving me hanging here.
This is Stephen Grunwald. I'm vaguely familiar with the project. I think that back half naturally drains away from Cotter towards the areas that are of concern because there is no means to get it from the property boundary to an existing street or right of way or drainage ditch. And the master plan does show a drainage boundary with that area going off to the other direction. So, you know, based on existing topo, based on the master plan, something's gonna have to be done to be able to convey that drainage, you know, go in that direction.
Nicole, can you pull up the proposed master plan revision exhibit?
Yep.
I think that'll help clarify exactly what's going on here.
Hang on just a second.
Who asked for that?
Stephen Skrabarczyk.
Stephen Skrabarczyk, I apologize.
Hang on.
Are you talking about the utility plan, Stephen?
No, I'm talking about
No,
the
hang on.
master plan amendment request.
I've got it right here. Sorry, it's a lot of buttons to push. Hang on.
What are we gonna do without you?
Oh, there you go.
I guess if you can zoom in on the
Yeah.
bottom left.
Yeah, so those yellow lines are the drainage basin boundaries.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Anyway, I'll let you take it, Stephen. Go ahead.
Okay, so if you can kind of see where the development is, the purple lines seem to outline is it lot 3A?
I'll try to get in there a little closer.
Okay, and that area, part of the master drainage plan, was supposed to go to the street to the west or south. I'm not sure what direction exactly this plan is, but the drainage can't go there because of the property is surrounded by private development. So it makes more sense to send that drainage to Cotter. And that this master plan amendment markup is indicating that the developer intends to do that, to send it to Cotter to make it work.
So essentially by approving the plat, you're giving them the ability to do that.
And
it really is his only other option.
So I have a question about the first comment on the review, engineer review, where it says that all public improvements must be planned, permitted, and constructed prior to recording of the final plat.
That's pretty typical.
That's
road has to
typical
be
of every-
in, all that has to be in before we record the plat. You can.
Okay, so we're even if we and the city council approve this plat, they can't file it until all that infrastructure is in.
Right. So how it happens, just the process is planning and zoning gets a preliminary and a final plat, sometimes together, sometimes separately. They approve that. Then they come and give us construction plans. That's sent to the reviewing engineer as well. Those are approved and permitted. That infrastructure is put in, and then the final plat gets signed and recorded.
Okay.
Okay.
And so
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
The city is the biggest neighbor to this property. I guess y'all thought about how this drainage might affect y'all?
Well, they'll have to, like I said, they've submitted, although minimal, Stephen Skrabarczyk says that kind of is the reviewer that it's good enough, then it's fine. They'll be able to manage it. They'll have to manage it. They'll just have to take it a different direction than what because they don't have a choice because of the way the development has gone around them. So I mean, we
I'd like to make a
typically,
motion.
as we try to explain to property owners, we typically don't worry about it because we do hold them responsible, and we would see that drainage plan before they'd ever permit anything.
In the construction, in the civil plan stage.
I'd like to make a motion. Am I being heard?
I hear you.
I can hear you.
I can hear you. We haven't had a lot of discussion,
I would
Frank.
like to make a motion that we deny this until we get adequate provisions for stormwater runoff. There you go. That's my motion.
Yeah, the wording on the review seems very skeptical. It basically says they can't verify.
Yeah, that's why I want that.
So I guess I want to know, why is the city advocating that we approve this?
No, I mean, well,
I want to have some clear
we're just
instructions.
stating the facts. Like I said, it wasn't as detailed of a plan as you saw in the other plats, and that's why I pointed that out early on. But I wanted Stephen to weigh in because I'm not an engineer with respect to that. So like I said, I threw it out there. You guys.
We had addressed
I
this
just feel like on the other
property-
ones, you had a clear instructions on how the city felt about the actual application. And on this one, you're kind of saying, we're lukewarm about it.
Hey, Rick, let me
And
ask you.
the language is lukewarm too.
I think one of the engineers wants to jump in there.
No, that might have been me. I'm no.
Oh, okay, sorry.
This is Thomas Tiffin. I want to speak on behalf of the drainage part. We've already presented to the city construction drawings that indicate that we will be installing storm sewer to drain the rear property and the adjacent properties that are within this plat to Cotter. We are also, within those construction drawings, indicating that we will construct Sharkway, and we've gotten with the water district there to show how we're going to serve it with water and sewer.
So you have presented an infrastructure plan for this lot.
Yes. Yeah. All we have to do is provide utilities to the lot, and that we have presented.
Yeah. But I swore they just said they didn't have that, but
yeah,
maybe I misheard that.
Wait, so you have construction drawings saying that you're going to drain which lots to Cotter?
We have provided to the city the initial construction drawings, and we've received comments on those construction drawings, and we're in the process of finishing up the comments on those.
I feel like we were just told that those were not available, that those had not been received by the city. Nicole or Rick?
Yeah, what?
Those were submitted. I didn't hear you say that they weren't available or weren't submitted yet.
Oh, well, earlier there was a question about it, and it was said that, we have no idea what they're going to do, that hadn't been presented.
Yeah,
The construction drawings are for development.
So we were
That's
talking
for-
about, when they said we have no idea what they want to do back there, we don't know what kind of development they're putting back there. The
Right.
construction
The
plan
construction drawings are for
with
utilities.
Shark Way, the actual street. that they're putting in.
Infrastructure.
Correct.
So the infrastructure and the development plans, the construction drawings that they have provided, provide drainage for the front two developed lots in addition to Sharkway. Is that right?
Say that again?
The construction drawings that they've submitted are stating that they are going to construct drainage for the front two lots, like a storm sewer system for the two developed parcels in addition to Sharkway.
And this is Thomas Tiffin again with the engineer. That storm drainage system will also serve the rear lot.
Right.
So you're putting in some sort of storm inlet right there at Sharkway And then you're going to plan to regrade the entire lot 3A to accept in that one storm system.
That will be done during whatever development happens back there.
The regrading
That
of
would require a lot of fill.
3 acres.
Yeah. It will allow the development that ever happens back there, whatever it is, to drain through that system that we're installing along Shark Way.
Well, all right, then I guess I'm a little confused, which I shouldn't be, but so let me ask Steven Skrabarczyk if, and again, we've been having discussions on this replat for probably, Nicole, what, close to 2 years?
Just about.
Yeah, so forgive me if I can't cast my memory back that far on this particular one, but if you have those drawings, I think what Vanessa is saying, that the reason I'm a little lukewarm is because, again, our reviewing engineer, which we have to rely on heavily, again, was a little bit, as somebody pointed out, a little bit vague, that the size and depth of the storm sewer weren't shown, the size and depth of the sanitary sewer on Cotter weren't shown. So I'm wondering if Stephen saw these plans you're talking about, because I can't recall what we're talking about then. Because if we had those, we would have presented them and we would have had a more detailed drainage plan to present. So Thomas, I don't want to put you on the spot, but where's the disconnect here? I guess I'm trying to find out.
I think I can clarify here.
All right.
My letter is at this stage, what's required is a general plan for what they're going to do with the stormwater. They've indicated that they're going to construct Shark Way and put stormwater improvements, underground stormwater improvements in Shark Way, so that they can tie in future development on Lot 3A into that system. That's my understanding so far. What the letter, the intent of my comments on the letter were, is just to specify some things that are expected in the construction plans, which are not required at this stage. So they have a preliminary plan. They don't have a final approved construction plan for Shark Way.
Okay, so just, Stephen, just to be clear, because again, I want to make sure that we meet, I don't know if we've always done this in the past, so that the ordinance says that, you know, that the only way they can recommend approval is if the plan makes adequate provisions for storm and floodwater runoff channels or basins. I guess the simple question is, do you feel that we've got enough to say that it meets that requirement? It makes adequate provisions for storm or flood?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I.
And that's if we give a variance, correct?
Well, I don't, it's not a variance.
Asking for.
It's not a variance in the sense that we think of variances. It's just that our drainage plan is, this is the only time I've ever seen this come up to where this property falls within a drainage basin boundary. If you go back to that drawing, and what normally what has to happen, properties within these different drainage basins that we have around the city, their drainage has to be taken based on that. In this case, it can't. It can be drained, but it can't be drained within that drainage basin. Stephen, am I saying that somewhat correct?
No, okay, wait, before you ask Stephen.
Okay.
Because Stephen just said, it's my understanding, and he's the engineer. So he should say, this is what it is. It's not my understanding.
Stephen is our
reviewing engineer.
And
Stephen is our engineer at this point.
I will say that this is not, we don't know what the drainage is on this property. And we have got to say no to it until we understand it.
There was a question before you started talking, Frank, trying to get a little more clarification on the variance versus something. Rick, you were saying this is the first time it's come up and it's not exactly a variance. Can you say that again?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the first time I've seen where you have a property that falls within again, the exhibit that Nicole's got up there, it falls within that particular drainage basin, the yellow boundary lines. But as our engineer for the cities explains, it really won't work with the way our drainage plan is worded, which says you got to take your water to Cotter. It's not that it can't be drained; it just can't be drained in the traditional way that our plan is written because of development around it.
But it can need some sort of detention pond or retainage pond to drain it at a lower rate than going and putting it in concrete. So it's easier essentially to regrade the entire lot to change the drainage pattern. My biggest concern, I guess, that I have is these master drainage plan, our storm sewer for City of Port Aransas was designed based on these master drainage plans. So the storm sewer system, the size pipe that we have underneath Cotter, was not planned to accept an additional 3.4 acres. So
Especially if it's going to be graded.
Yes, so I'm concerned about the city's drainage and the city size pipes that we have going on in that drainage basin that we're trying to divert this water to.
Thank you, Clark.
Well, my concern is it doesn't really matter if you call it a variance or not. You're asking us to set aside a community agreed upon plan and say, you know what, that's good for everybody else, but for this plan, it's not good. So it is, I mean, it doesn't matter if you call it a variance or not. And I feel like the engineer's comments and the city's comments are not strong enough for us to hang our hat on to say, you know, and that we know better and that it should be set, the community plan should be set aside for this one plat.
So, you know, kind of the deal here that's the kicker is, to no fault of the property owner,
Right.
he was built up around him and cannot adhere to the drainage plan that we have in the books today. So that's not as a fault to him. That's, I mean, he's landlocked and has nowhere to go because the adjoining properties that surround him have closed him in, leaving him no option but to go back to Cotter.
Robert,
So
I'll argue with you with a little bit on that one, just from the standpoint, the water that is there today is draining off to the south per this picture. I don't know the
Correct.
actual view, but it is draining
A
south.
portion of it, correct. A portion.
Once it's developed and puts in concrete everywhere and buildings and whatnot, it's obviously going to drain at a faster rate and a higher volume. You can detain that water to slow it down. It is just more expensive for the property owner.
So your recommendation is something more along the lines of a catch pond or retaining pond?
If that's what the homeowner or the landowner needs to do in order to make it work, then yes. So I used to design drainage for a living. Like, I'm a licensed civil engineer. I'm not practicing anymore, but this is one area that I feel competent in. And changing a master drainage plan, especially these aren't big drainage areas that we have in this town. I mean, we're fairly small footprint. So when you take 3.4 acres and put it into a whole nother drainage basin, that can severely affect the size of drainage and the size of pipes in that system.
Thank you, Clark. Mr. Chairman, I move that we deny.
Hey, Frank, let me ask you something though. So can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Can we ask the developer and submitter? I think I maybe know where this is going. And Clark, I appreciate your input. That's why we like to have expertise on planning and zoning. Before you make a motion, maybe could we give, Mr. Chairman, if it's all right with you, could we give the developer a chance to just withdraw the plat for consideration to give us an opportunity to hammer this drainage out? It would just avoid him having to resubmit the plat. The only way we can avoid our 30-day legal limit on a plat is if he withdraws it for now, but then he wouldn't have to resubmit it. He wouldn't have to refile it. I'm sorry, is the right term. We could just try to get these things addressed, get another, see if there's a better way to get you the information. So that's all I'm asking.
I don't see a problem with that.
But that's if the developer and the submitter is willing to do that.
Are we asking him?
I mean, if that's all right with you to give them that option, they just need to weigh in. It's not my call.
No, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Adams, if I may.
Yes.
I have not had a chance to talk to my client about that during the course of our discussion. Maybe if I could figure out the chat room, I could do that. Could you give me just 1 second?
Or I can mute both of you guys, and if you want to have a chance to talk to each other, make a phone call.
Sure, if it's possible to put Mr. Malul and me together.
Well, I can't do that, so you guys would have to talk to each other privately on a phone call. I can just mute you from our conversation.
Okay, can you do that? I'll go ahead and mute, and I will try to reach Mr. Malul.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something they can work out, but as I said at the very beginning, I don't think there wasn't as much detail as we saw in the other plats. And I think that'll give them an opportunity to do that. I do think they can figure it out. Would you say that's a possibility, Clark? Various means?
Yes, it's definitely a possibility.
I do too. And I just, like I said, I would rather.
What do you think, Jay?
Can't we just table it on our own? Or do they
No.
have to draw it?
We have to take action on it.
That's what I'm thinking, Jay, you know?
I mean, I understand what Rick's saying though. If we
Afraid that's a step off, right?
table it, they got to
So-
start over.
So if we table it, by state law, it's going to be automatically approved 30 days after their submission.
Right.
So we can either approve it or deny it. They can willingly pull it and absolve us of that 30-day
But if
time.
we deny it, they have to start over.
And I'm
Correct.
asking to deny it.
Well, I think at this
Yeah.
point, it looks like that's what we're going to do. So Rick has stepped in and trying to
Yeah, but I mean,
benefit the
so-
developer, help them out to get through the system a little easier next time.
The process, right?
Yeah,
Process.
So
I don't disagree that I would like to have seen more drainage. I told you that right up front. So, but if that's the issue, I mean, let's let them try to resolve it and come back.
Just for reference, we had this on our agenda about 6 months ago, did we not?
And probably a year ago as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Well over a year ago.
Yeah, so this is not the first time it's come up. I'm trying to remember what happened last time because it's not,
They pulled it.
did they pull it?
They did. They ended up having to resubmit it.
I thought last time the city recommended denial. And that's why they pulled it, right?
If we did, it was for the same reason, Vanessa. It was just, we were up against that timeline and we weren't ready to recommend.
It's just been a long time.
Yeah.
It has. I can't remember without having gone back into the minutes. So Stephen, I'm curious though, is this amendment to the drainage plan, is this something that you worked out with Thomas?
Yes, this is
Okay.
something that we worked on together because there's not another good way to drain it. And they have to prove with the construction drawings that the drainage can go into their system.
Okay.
But
Stephen,
that's
so, I mean-
not required at this stage. The thing that's required at this stage is that they provide a way to drain it, and the preliminary utility plan seems to show that.
But I would agree with Vanessa, since it is something that's out of the ordinary. I don't want to use the term variance, but regardless, I mean, I kind of agree with Vanessa. For this particular circumstance, I don't think it would be inappropriate to ask them to provide more detail than normal, because we are asking them to do something outside of the norm, and based on Clark's comments as well.
I just want to make sure that we're clear on what we're asking them. I don't think that we're
Right,
going
me
to
too.
get past this amendment to the master drainage plan. So are we just asking them to have approved civil construction plans prior to bringing the plat back to us?
Well, I'd like Stephen and Clark to kind of say what they'd like. I mean, I think they're better equipped than I am to ask what we want.
I think I just want a little more detail on what kind of drainage system we have in Cotter as is, and can it accept, is it sized to accept an additional 3.4 acres?
And what's that? Yeah, what's it based on? What, some calculations, and some
Hey, Rick.
verifiable data.
Steven Skrabarczyk, was Jim part of this conversation to do that amendment to the master drainage plan?
No.
Okay. So I just need to be able to help them figure out exactly what we need to see from them to move it forward.
Yes, Ms. Moyer, that would be very, very helpful. We had the expectation that the drainage, at least the developer did, would be decided upon when the actual use of the land was decided upon. It may be that because some of the land already naturally drains south and into the other parts that did not flow into West Cotter, that could be kept intact. And that kind of drainage is permissible. In fact, if you change drainage, that's when you start getting into trouble. If you, for example, overload your neighbor's lot. But here, we're just talking about taking some of the sheet flow, the water, to West Cotter. I don't know that it's going to be all 3.4 acres. That depends upon how the land will be developed. My client is not intending to develop it. My client is intending to sell the land for a future development.
And Thomas, I think that's kind of the dilemma, is it, like I said, like you saw on the other plats, or if you haven't, you know, and I get it, and we can't require you, you know, you tell us what you don't know, but with the other ones, you know, they gave us a subdivision plan, there's lots, and they, you know, they actually show, you know, where those inlets are going to be in the conveyance mechanisms and all of that. That's a challenge. I get it. So without what you're going to do, it is a little bit more difficult, but I mean, I certainly understand them wanting a little bit more detail.
Well, the developer has agreed to withdraw the plat so that we can hopefully get some additional guidance on what the commission would like to see. Instead, we understood, based upon the engineer's opinion, his letter, that it was in fact in conformity with the city ordinances. And so we're a little bit taken off guard here. I don't have a drainage plan to show you that is different than what's already been presented, but we'll see if we can work on something.
Yeah, Thomas, I understand, but like I said, the commissioners are challenged with, you know, making those determinations and are appointed to do so. So it's, you know, it's, you know.
No, and I don't want them not to do their job. They're there. They're good citizens, and they're looking out for the needs of their community, and that's fine by my client and myself personally.
And again, if it's all right with the commission, maybe I'll if Clark, you know, Clark and Stephen, if we can kind of just convene offline after the meeting and or sometime in the very near future, we'll get together and if you guys would let Clark be your spokesperson, commission, and kind of help us, you know, get the additional detail you want.
Yes, I'll meet with you. Just let me know when.
Is that all right with you guys or anybody that wants to? I mean, just so that we can kind of just got to make sure we give the developer a path forward with what additional detail and what we want to do, and I'm all for that.
May I say something, please? This is Shlomo speaking.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to develop to separate this lot for 3 pieces so I can do something by the individual pieces. It's 3 lots. Right now it's one big piece, and we're trying to do it as 3 lots. I'm not saying I'm going to develop it. I'm not saying I'm doing anything, building on it, but I need to separate them. Whoever come to build on it, you can tell him what to do after. And it's very simple, just to divide it into simple.
Right. The problem is, Shlomo, once we allow you to divide it into that 3rd lot, it's developable. You can do whatever the zoning allows, and without, we've kind of got a plan on the worst case scenario, which we don't even have any idea what that is yet, and the drainage being able to accommodate that. You got 3.42 acres at 21 units an acre. You could put a whole lot of houses back there, or other things. And that's without that plan. Again, we understand you don't know what you're going to do, but we've still got a plan for that, because once we allow that division, that third lot to be divided off, you're able to develop it. And that's our dilemma.
We're trying to separate these lots 2 years already.
Well, I know.
It's a long time. And we're trying to work with the city on this. And whatever you guys ask, we do. And we submit. Engineering working with us. The engineering of the city, everybody. Where should we go yet? Where should we go?
I think we're close. I mean, I can't speak for the commission, but I mean, I think that they just want a little bit more detail.
Whatever you guys ask, we did.
Shlomo, they're going to give us a chance to discuss this later on. So if we can pull the plat at the present time, we can see how we can address the city's concerns, the planning commission's concerns.
Yeah, what I'm asking is just the approval. After that, we do the permits and everything for the construction road.
So we're pulling the plat, correct?
I think that's
all right.
I mean, I think that's your best path forward right now. Otherwise,
it's going to be denied otherwise. And then you have to go through the process again. I mean, let's call it what it is. It will be denied, and then you're going to have to go through the process again. This way, you don't have to go through that process. We try to work it out with the engineers, and then it just comes back.
We'll work with the engineers and we get back to you. Thank you, guys. Thank you for
quickly.
everything. Thank you.
All right, Shlomo.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Mr. Adams, Ms. Boyer, is that all you need in the form of an actual withdrawal of the plat?
If you guys don't mind just sending me an email would work just fine, if you could do that.
Yeah, I'd rather have.
This is official on record, but
it's on the record, but yeah, I'd rather have it just an email to confirm it, and then that way we can reply back with how we move from here.
Right.
I appreciate it, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys. Be safe.
Thank you.
You too.
Item 5, planning and zoning comments and items for future consideration.
Coronavirus. Nobody get it, please.
Please.
Oh, we need to hit it? Is that what you wanted?
Yeah. So I don't think anything else is going to be submitted. I was going to say we probably wouldn't need a meeting in May, but now obviously we're going to with this landing if they can get that worked out in time. So that's going to be up to Rick. I will not be here.
And we'd like to say congratulations to you. Good luck to your family. We'll be thinking about you.
I'll be around.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Be safe.